People say, well, it's about the money. No, it's not about the money.
You don't have Cadillac.
It's about innovation. If you're not there, how can they innovate? How can they try to compete?
Well, that package is for tomorrow night, so tomorrow's meeting.
Morning,
is in
Bob.
my truck.
It's not our decision. We'll just have to,
Can we make a county rule that no township?
Morning, Ross, Mr.
Hey, are we
Chairman.
allowed to open these before the meeting?
How are you? Sure.
All right,
Thank you for being here.
read this baby now.
John, are you awake? Good.
Clock is fast anyway.
Morning, Dennis.
All right.
Morning. Morning, John.
Pass that down.
Sure.
Morning, Danny. Morning, Carl.
Did you see Maureen Dean's boy died?
No.
Her oldest boy, Sid?
No.
No.
Just turned 50 and out in the
No.
woods. He was pulp and log cutter and out in the woods Friday afternoon late, cutting, and he set the saw down, shut it off, and told the guy he was with, he says, I got chest pains, I'm gonna head
Oh,
back to the
no.
car and go home, and never even made it to the car.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, the funeral's today at 11, I believe.
You know,
I see some of the township people are taking up a collection to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, the MTA.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Resource Management Administration Committee to order. It's February 9th, 2011. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Fleece?
Present.
Max Bauer?
here.
Thomas? Here. Lemkool?
Here.
Henschel?
Here, ma'am.
Inman?
Here.
Gilman?
Here.
Richardson?
Here. Okay, and our first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of January 12th.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the January 12th minutes of the regular meeting.
Or,
Okay, is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the closed session minutes of January 12th. I know it's not on the agenda, but they're
Right.
on our desk.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion on the closed session minutes? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And that brings us to first public comment. Clerk will read the
I
rules.
don't need the exercise, I'll wait.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. 1. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. 2. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Okay, and we're now open for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make any comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, close public comment and go on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Goldman?
Can I pull 5? Oh, we're not there.
No, we're not there yet.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, consent calendar will do
Okay.
next.
I move we approve the agenda.
I have a motion by Thomas to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, special orders of business, I guess we have none. And now we have the consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Grand Traverse Conservation District Monthly Report. Number 2, Housing Liaison Monthly Report and Program Status. Number 3, Road Commission Monthly Report. Number 4, Drain Commissioner Annual Report for 2010. Number 5, Workmen's Compensation Report for 2010. Number 6, Human Resources Snapshot. B, Department Action Items. A, Planning. Number 1, Energy, oops.
No.
You're done.
Those are not part of the consent calendar this morning. Instead of receiving file. Okay, is there any member of the public who would like to have any item on the consent calendar removed for discussion? Okay, then I'll take it back to the board. Commissioner Gilman?
If I could have 5, just for discussion.
Okay, number 5.
Number 1, please.
Max Bauer.
Number 4.
And number 4. Okay, any other items?
Number
I'm
1.
sorry. Number 1.
It's a short agenda.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the consent calendar be approved with the exception of item 1, 4, and 5.
Support.
and if I could just make a comment, if it's all right with everyone, I'd just soon take these up before we start on the department action
That's
items.
fine.
Sure.
Okay, let's need a roll call on the consent calendar, please.
Commissioner Fleece?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Lemko?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Richardson?
Yes. Okay, then let's take up the items removed from the consent calendar, and we'll just take them in numerical order. So, the first item was the Grand Traverse Conservation District Monthly Report. Commissioner Henschel?
Thank you. I just wanted to remove that for an opportunity to make a comment on one of the items in their report is the fact that a local entrepreneur wanted to start a business involving canoes, and there's talk about a canoe livery. And basically, it was not the Conservation District that did it, although they supported the decision of the township to shut him down and not let him start a business that would employ 4 people that are currently unemployed and help our local economy. And I just wanted you all to be aware of that and just encourage us to be very wary of our decisions and how they affect small business and our economy. And I think it's tragic that a person tries to start a business, and rather than the government saying, these are the guidelines you need to fall in, tell them you just can't do it. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Fleece?
He's talking about Blair Township, and I would have to agree with him. I attended the meetings where, in fact, Commissioner Thomas and I both attended meetings where that was really discussed, and it made me a little angry that the people on the river seem to think they own the river. And this guy applied for a permit to conduct a rental of canoes, not even right on the river. You know, he was going to rent them, and there was access to the river at that point. And so far, it's been denied.
Okay. Mr. Max Bauer?
I would move to receive and file the Grand Traverse Conservation District Monthly Report.
Support.
Any further discussion? Commissioner
As
Longfellow?
your liaison to the Conservation District, I will be glad to relay those back to you. But I also have to tell you, I'm not totally aware of how far this canoe was going to, the canoes were going to be allowed to go down. I know that since the lowering of the pond at the Brown Bridge, or Boardman Dam, that is an unsafe situation. They do not encourage people to take their canoes and get down there, because you have to take it out at Lone Pine, because if you don't, there is no other place to take them out. And I know they've got warning signs up there and everything else, so I think it's probably a safety factor, but I'm not sure, but I will find out more about it and maybe be able to relay back where we're at and what's going on from that.
No, it's a use factor. And There's another group there that was well represented in opposition, that has a club or something that uses another device similar to a canoe. They utilize the river. You know, they're not renting them, but,
The kayaks, you mean?
yeah. So it's a use issue. They don't want anybody else on the river, period.
Well, I think it's more to it than that, but I'll look into it.
Commissioner Henschel?
I actually met with the Conservation District on this item because it was of great concern to me. And their main concern was that the river would be overused, and by too many people putting in, pulling out, it would increase the sand on the bottom of the river. And I said, well, why didn't you just give them a number? Or why don't we put a number in place instead of just saying, no, you can't do it? And that was my concern.
The question I have, Herb, is,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, the note that, in the packet says this letter was prepared on behalf of the Director of Parks and Recreation, so I think if we have discussion about this, we should take input from both Parks and Recreation and from the Conservation District. If we really wanted further information about this and why this decision was made, we need to hear from the people that made the decision to oppose this. We can sit here and speculate why they chose to oppose it, but, this letter was written on behalf of the County Director of Parks and Recreation by the Conservation District, neither of whom are represented here this morning. So I think all we're doing is speculating why they did it and why they shouldn't have done it, so.
Okay. Commissioner Henschel?
I actually did talk to Jason Jones about it, and his comment about the subject was, that's not what that land was intended for, was basically what he told me regarding the...
They were going to put in a whitewater park.
Right. I honestly, I researched this a lot because I feel is my role in government is to really defend entrepreneurs that want to help our economy. And I talked to the guy who tried to do this, and he's down in Florida. He's just fit to be tied with the whole situation. He's ready to drop it all and not start a business here that would help our economy.
Commissioner Thomas?
Except the basic issue here is a zoning issue, and that's up to the township.
Yep. That's right.
Okay. Any further, Commissioner Fleece?
the question I have, Herb, you could ask at your next meeting would be, if Kalkaska County approves the same livery, how are they going to stop them canoes from coming down the Boardman once the dams are gone? They're not. They're not looking at the situation in its totality, my opinion.
In fact, the use of the river is not a zoning issue, but the location of the building is.
Right.
And he could rent the canoes to use on the Manistee River. So,
Okay.
this is a problem with zoning and all this other use business got into it, and they don't have any business controlling the use.
Okay, we have a motion to receive and file the report.
Good idea.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, item 4, the Drain Commissioner Annual Report. Commissioner Mathbar.
Yes, the reason I pulled this report is I want to compliment the Drain Commissioner for his meticulous and thorough annual report. I had asked Dean Bott approximately a year or so ago to give me a spreadsheet showing me, for going back 10 years, what each department their budgets were. The Drain Commissioner was the only department that actually spent less today than the department did 10 years ago. And in light of the recent torrential rains that we had, and every single one of his drains held, this meticulous report, I just wanted to take this opportunity to compliment Kevin McKellier, and with that, I will move to receive and file the Drain Commissioner Annual Report for 2010.
Support.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then Commissioner Gilman, the Workers' Compensation Report.
Well, every picture tells a story, don't it? And we look at the workers' compensation annual expenses and see the convenient upswing. Now, everybody, everyone might assume that that's an automatic thing as years go on. Costs escalate, but that isn't necessarily the case historically. However, in the last couple of years, as the economy has tanked, these numbers have jumped up significantly. Something to note, I don't pretend to be an expert, but I slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night. My father, as you know, was chairman of the board, Workman Compensation Appeals Board for the state of Michigan for several years. He's also a specialist in that particular field, and by osmosis, I've gathered a few things. And one of the things that he noted over the years was that as economies go down, those workman's comp claims go up, and sometimes where they might not have gone up otherwise. There might be a claim that might not have been made, but people worry about their jobs, and it's like, well, it's an easy way out. Are we doing anything to watch for ambiguous claims? Are we watching for people who are putting themselves at risk so that they don't have to worry about their job in other ways? And I guess it's not really so much a question, but I think it's just an observation that that's something that maybe we ought to be.
Well, it's something that we take very seriously and we watch very closely. I believe that in fact this is not the result of the economy. I think this is related directly to a claim that you're all aware of, or the new commissioners are not aware of, that is approximating $300,000, one claim that started in 2006 when the economy was quite good. And I don't know if we've settled that claim yet. Jen, is it still ongoing?
It's in the process.
It's still being negotiated. So if you look at these numbers here, which amount to in 2007 $65,000, 2008 is $45,000, and then you see in 2009 it goes up to 80, and then up to 120 or 130. I'm going to double check for you and we'll report back, but my guess is that that's almost exclusively a result of one claim that we're still in the process of litigating.
So this is showing monies that we've paid out towards that particular action? Okay.
Yeah. So I think we've been pretty fortunate, but I don't disagree. I think you're probably right, Commissioner, that the potential for that to happen in this kind of time requires us to be very diligent in watching this, and our insurance carrier is really very aggressive about that. But I did want to point out that I do believe in the last few years these big increases are the result of that, and I don't know, Jen, if you agree.
Yep, on the actual agenda item cover, 36,000 is the wage payments, 23,000 of that is to one individual.
Okay.
And I think you're absolutely correct with when the economy gets tough, things tend to go up in certain areas. But Grand Traverse County, I think, does an excellent job. I'll be honest, I was, having been here a year, I think the employees are very conscientious of this. We actually had the same number of incidents reported from 2009 to 2010. So I think that's actually a good sign, and it's actually lower than 2008. In 2008, we had 66 reported, and then the last 2 years, we had 53. So we're actually going the opposite way, and I think, but just for your information, but it's something we'll definitely keep our eyes on, so.
Have we had any enhanced safety training in the last couple of years, too? I mean,
we don't do it countywide. We do it department by department, depending on the specific job requirements of the department. But we regularly, for example, in our facilities department and our DPW department, there is regular safety training that goes on. I don't know that in facilities, Danny, you do it several times over the course of the year. Once a month.
Well, I guess the other thing, I'll tell you, I would kill to have my workman's comp rate be this low, if anybody's curious, But the other thing that really drives workman's comp costs is what the medical costs are. I had an employee 2 weeks ago, got a piece of something in his eye on Friday afternoon. I didn't know about it until Monday, but over the weekend he went to the emergency room at Munson Medical Center. The bill to remove that piece of rust from his eye was $737.
I can relate to that.
And the medical costs are what's driving these numbers up. I'm going to see a $10,000 increase in my workman's comp cost for 2011 based on 2 accidents.
And I think we have a good preventative measure here at Grand Traverse County because we have months in occupational health, and we had an incident over the weekend, and the employee just went there. So instead of waiting, it's well known to the employees, hey, you can go to this months in occupational health. You don't have to wait over the weekend to get something resolved too. So we've been trying to promote that as well. So I think that's good, so it doesn't, we don't have something that might wait a while and get infected or or whatnot too. So.
But I think it's good for the board to remind us, how we have to be diligent about this, because these things can get out of hand very quickly if you don't, keep a lid on it. And so we will do that.
I just must compliment all the employees because they are more safety conscious than most. And I think it's really critical when you start seeing 21 cents per $100 worth of payroll. That is really low.
It's clerical level.
Yeah, it really is. It's down into clerical level. And so, we need to continue to encourage the safety, but also we need to say thanks to the employees for being diligent and being safe. Good.
Okay, do I have a motion to...
Motion to approve it.
Receive and file?
Receive and
Okay.
file.
Second.
Second by Inman. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay. Now that we're through the consent calendar, we can go to the planning department and John Syke, the energy saving account proposal.
Good morning, John Syke, Grand Traverse County Planning and Development Director. What I have presented to you this morning is a proposal for an energy savings account. In 2010, the county received approximately $400,000 in grant funding. This came from a couple different sources. One was through a energy efficiency and conservation block grant provided by the state of Michigan. Another one was a grant from the Council of Governments, which was actually funded through the Michigan Public Service Commission. And these were used to use different improvements throughout the county in several facilities, mostly lighting improvements, including this building, as well as the boiler replacement and solar panel installation at the Civic Center. And the county has a green team, which is primarily representatives of various departments, including planning and development, facilities management, public works, resource recovery, and that group has been meeting to talk about different strategies to further ways to find energy efficiency improvements within Grand Traverse County and its facilities. And one of the things that's been discussed as part of this process is to establish an energy savings account. And actually last fall, the Board of Commissioners, as part of the Council of Governments grant, did pass a resolution that was essentially those savings would be rolled back into further investments in terms of energy efficiency improvements. And this is actually taking the next step and actually creating an energy savings account that would capture those energy savings dollars and roll them back into further improvements. There's different ways that this can be done if the board is inclined to do it. There are different ways to measure. The county has been using a software program called Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and that's been data has been entered into that in terms of determining what the energy use is at the county so that it can be tracked to determine what those savings are. Another aspect of this is to also determine how much savings, those percentage of savings. The Green Team is recommending 100% that can be determined at whatever level the board wants to consider at, but the Green Team's recommending 100. There are some requirements in the Public Service Commission grant that came through the Council of Governments that level be at least at 50%. Also, there's a need to identify what are some of those projects, and that's what the Green Team has been doing in terms of prioritizing those. And so somebody needs to do those to recommend to the county board how those improvements will be, which improvements will be selected, and that's something that the Green Team is willing to continue to facilitate that process.
So if I understand it correctly, the savings that are identified, if you're talking about 100%, the savings that are identified would be set aside and then plowed back into more energy-saving type investments?
Right.
Okay. Any idea, any estimate how much money we're talking about?
Not at this time, because one of the things we've just been doing is trying to get some baseline information, and we have completed all of the data for 2009. There was initially some data that was done for 2005, but that really wasn't to the level that we need to be at. In 2009, we've really got the base level data. And now, since those improvements that we made in 2010, we really need a full year of operation to determine what those savings are.
Commissioner Gilman.
You mentioned the solar panels at the Civic Center. How much did that cost?
Well, the total project was roughly about $190,000. That included going from, I believe, 11 boilers down to 5 energy efficiency boilers.
I'm talking about the solar panel.
It was part of the whole
It was
project.
part of the whole. I would have to find out what the actual cost.
How much of it roughly? Of the 190?
$30,000.
But that was majority, it was grant funded.
It was all
100%.
Right. No, right.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, and like we've talked about this before, in that project, I think it's a good demonstration to the community of potential, and we'll measure the solar panels, but quite honestly, as we told the board, the real energy efficiency there was going from 11 boilers down to 5 energy efficient boilers. To be honest, yeah.
Actually, on that project, I understand that, the issues related to solar, but the state was very enthused by that because we were one of the few communities in the state that actually did renewable energy. Most people did, lights and so forth, and that was we were one of the only communities that actually did some renewable.
Okay, I was, and I'm trying to remember where I get the information. I was under the impression that the solar project was actually, that was the cost.
190 total, but that was both solar and all the...
And there's a meter that tracks the savings?
Yes, actually, you can go into the lobby of the Civic Center, and there's a display unit that actually shows how the system works and what the savings are on that.
Does the meter measure both the savings from the boiler? No? Just the solar?
Right.
Okay, then that would lead some to some confusion, so, thank you.
Well, I think it's important to note that we made a significant number of energy savings between that 2005 date and the 2009 date that you're using basis too, because, we did all of the Front Street stuff in between that building, and, but we've made significant improvements in our energy consumption. And as far as, our energy costs, the move to IGC over the last, what have we been there now, Dan, 3 years, 4 years?
No. Has it been that long?
That's saved us a huge amount of money, and, for the board's information, I assume by the end of this month, Danny will be back here telling you what next year's rates are going to be, but we talk regularly because we both watch that gas rate, and we've been pretty lucky the last 3 years, so.
Right. Mr. Loya?
I think the fundamental question for you here is, we have a commitment that we have to, meet some kind of energy savings and to put energy savings into new projects. I think the question is, what's an appropriate level? And that's a pretty difficult thing to decide when you don't know what the savings are going to look like. I would just tell you that we've talked about it, and I'm comfortable, at the 80%, 100% level, because frankly, most of our capital improvements at this point end up going into energy-saving things. I mean, you talk about our health department, for example. If we do that expansion project or move to Tom's, in all likelihood, we're going to be putting in new boilers. And those are going to be Energy Star, high-efficient boilers. I don't have any problem. And what I talked to Dean about is set money aside once we know what it is, and then use that money to be appropriated to the capital improvement fund to fund energy projects, which, like I said, are the majority of what we try to do anyway.
So basically, it's just a carve out of what we're.
That's exactly
of what we're
right.
already appropriating.
Yeah, because as Sonny said, we started this back in 2005, 2006. I don't see it ending. We're going to always be trying to do things more energy efficiently, and I think it'll be easy to spend that money in those regards and not really change the way we fund or what we fund.
Commissioner Flees?
I would make a motion that we approve the attached energy savings account proposal with the following terms that are listed here. Actual cost savings documented from an established baseline year through Energy Start Portfolio Manager. 100% of the documented energy saved would be placed in an energy savings account, and the Green Team will facilitate the project selection process. And I would suggest that we reevaluate this perhaps in 2 years.
Support.
Okay. Support by
Thank you.
Commissioner Henschel?
Just a quick question. The grants we receive for this sort of thing, where does that money come from?
The Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant was ARA money, so those are federal monies.
So, where does that money come from, is what I'm asking?
It was a stimulus project.
Yeah,
It was a
stimulus monies.
Okay. So my grandkids.
Yeah, that's what the ARA Act is. The Council of Governments grant came from the Michigan Public Service Commission, and that's all I know on that in terms of, because that was actually granted to us from the Council of Governments and not the Public Service Commission.
Thank you.
Max Bauer?
The only thing I would like to say is, rather than take a look at this every 2 years, I'd like to take a look at this on an annual basis. And I just think it behooves us to take a look at how much money we're putting into energy efficient or energy savings projects and what our return on that investment is.
But isn't it true that we pretty much automatically review this at budget time?
Well, that's true, but also under Section 4 of reporting, the Green Team's going to prepare a report annually and give it to me, and I will forward it to all the commissioners so that you can have a
So we will be
discussion about it.
reviewing it annually.
The reason I
Absolutely.
suggested a reevaluation in 2 years is you have to establish a baseline, and then we'll have another full year.
Right.
And then perhaps we can reevaluate it and perhaps not look at it again, look at it yearly, whatever, you know.
Yeah, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. And now we have Danny Brown from Facilities.
Good morning, Danny Brown, Facilities Director. Come to you this morning with hopefully getting a new truck approved. My recommendation would be to go with Signature Ford out of Owasso. They were the low bidder.
Danny, this truck does not have a plow on it?
We already have the plow.
You need to transfer your plow?
Yes.
Commissioner Fleece?
I would make a motion that we approve the purchase, authorize the purchase of a Ford F-250 from Signature Ford in Owasso in the amount of $24,043 as they were the low bidder.
Commissioner Redmond?
Support, but I have a question.
Commissioner Redmond?
How do you determine when you come to the board and ask for replacement of vehicles? I mean, is it mileage driven? Is it cost of maintenance? Is it the life of the vehicle?
All of the above.
All the above?
Yes.
It just isn't worth any time, money, or effort
The
to
truck that
put
this-
anything more into it?
Well, the truck that this replaces, we won't even allow it on the road. It's that bad.
Is this
It's
the one
got
that we use with the park staff?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know what year it is?
93.
This is a 93.
Yeah, 93.
Okay. Yeah, and you know, when we go through the budget, this came at the budget time.
Okay.
When we brought this to you at budget, you know, it comes with all your other requests, and you know, you guys go through that pretty thoroughly in terms of which ones are the most critical, and we try to make recommendations to you on those as well. But this truck is pretty well beaten up, and I remember that all we use it for is driving around volunteers inside the park because of its situation. But it's a combination of maintenance and mileage.
Right.
Danny, I did want to ask you, we did take into, I'm just asking this rhetorically, we did take into account the local preference on this, and
We did.
and this is still lower.
Yes, it doesn't make
Local
it.
preference would be $25,245.15. I just did that calculation.
Right. I have that as well.
Commissioner Longfellow?
Yeah, I guess, you know, I have a problem, you know, I guess my question is how is this going to make us more efficient? How is it going to, you know, when we start looking at budgeting for outcomes, how is this going to make you more efficient for a county if the truck you're currently using is only being used for driving people around? Why do we need to replace it? You know, we got other vehicles that are already being used. You know, every time I see the Conservation District They do everything they do with a hand-me-down. And we seem to think that we have to buy brand-new vehicles and to replace something else. And I'm just not so sure that we need to buy a brand-new vehicle. At the time, if I was looking at this with my business and revenues were going down, and I was going to have to determine whether or not I was going to buy a new vehicle or try and stay in business, I wouldn't be buying a new vehicle.
Is that a question? Okay. Commissioner Gilman.
That really brings up a good point. As we know, I mean, it's nice to be able to get into a brand-new vehicle, but that's a very good point. And we've got as a perfect example, I don't know them, so I'm not plugging them as a friend or anything, but we've got this car lot down here, Where's Used Cars, and they have premium cars that they sell that are secondhand. They get a decent dollar for them, but they're low mileage, they're maintained, they're checked out, and they come with a warranty. And it might behoove us to look at some of those possibilities, get some low mileage, decently checked out used vehicles in those situations too. Something to consider to support our local businesses as well.
Commissioner Inman, did you have a comment?
I guess, yeah. Personally, I struggle with it in my own decisions about what I drive in. Should I buy something used or buy something new? And I guess I take a look at it from a perspective that when I'm buying a new truck, I'm getting a pretty good warranty with it, up to what is it now, 50, 60,000 miles or whatever it is.
Some are 100,000.
And then you can buy for a reasonable price up to 100,000 miles for tranny and engine, and for 3 years, I know I don't have to put a dime into that vehicle other than changing oil. So I guess that was the determining factor that I used personally, rather than going into a used vehicle that I knew probably I would have a higher expensive maintenance going forward for the first 3 years than having hardly any zero maintenance. And then I'd have the warranty. So that's how I weighed buying a used one versus a new one.
Commissioner Fleece?
I recently needed a truck for my business, so starting last May, I've really been actively looking, and I wanted to buy used, at least I thought. This truck here, I would venture to say the way it's outfitted is in excess of $40,000. I'm not aware, and we're going to buy it for $24,000. I'm not aware of any used vehicles that have a bid assist program available. If you go out and spend $24,000 to buy a truck like this, you're still going to be down around 2002, 2003, and you still have a used truck. I agree with Commissioner Inman, the warranty itself, and stop and think about it. We all drove here this morning. Anybody driving a 17-year-old vehicle? I don't think so. It's time to buy a new one.
I've always been a believer that, especially if you're going to own something for 10 or 15 or 18 years, you really make out by buying new and holding on to it that long. Quite frankly, I wish I could buy a truck like this for $20,000.
Oh, definitely.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Well, Danny, you made the comment that the truck this is replacing is currently just shuttling people around at the Civic Center. But obviously, if we're buying a 3/4-ton truck, we're planning to put a plow on it, and we're putting a lift gate on the top of it. We have need for this truck for a lot of things besides shuttling people around.
Oh, yeah, definitely. One of the other things about this truck, and the reason why I didn't go the 1-ton route rather than the 3/4, is that we got a weight limit on the bridge, on the track, of 10,000 pounds. And that's why we don't load up those trucks that go over that bridge. I just made some repairs on that bridge just recently, actually. And it really concerns me, if you take a truck that's a 1-ton, you put a salt or sander on the back of it, it's loaded, and you got a plow in the front of that, I mean, you got a GVW of 11,000 pounds, maybe 12. So that's why this is a lighter duty truck. One of its tasks in the winter will be to plow the track, and we plow it every day. several times.
Chairman, I would move for the purchase of the truck from
Actually, I think we
Signature.
already have a motion.
We got a motion
Seconded.
support already.
Okay, any further discussion, Commissioner?
I just wanted to commend you for driving the wheels off this truck and not insisting on a new truck every 3 years. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Commissioner, Dennis?
Roll call.
Roll call, please, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Max Bauer?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Limcool?
No.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Fleece?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes. Dennis?
Yeah, if I could just take a second, I want to tell you about an incident we had at that facilities worked on. Every year, the bridge that is on our track is inspected, and this last year, we failed the inspection. The welds on the bridge started to deteriorate and were cracking.
Really?
And that bridge is how old, Danny?
The bridge is, I think it was put in 98,
Okay.
maybe 97 or 98.
And so, this could have obviously been a huge issue for us. Well, Danny took it upon himself. He contacted the company that put the bridge material together and that did the design. He had the engineers look at it. And basically, I guess in summary, you were able to get the company to come up and bring new material at no cost to the county.
That's correct.
And it was, did we pay for the labor to do the work on it?
We paid $380.
So for $380, Danny had that bridge reconstructed,
Good job.
recertified, and it's in brand-new shape again now, and will last us another 20 to 30 years. So I just wanted to congratulate him on his work.
Damaged shortly after it was installed.
Was there?
It was a weld. What it was that when they welded this brace, right up on the top, there was like a pinhole, and it wasn't any bigger than you could take a paper clip and put inside that little opening. Well, over years and years, water got down inside that tube, and then in the wintertime, it expanded and it cracked that brace. And it was right in the center of the span. So, I
This is
thought-
one of those
bridge
ones
was
where Danny
accident
comes to me and says, "We've got a problem," and I say, "Well, fix it." Danny went out and he fixed it, and it just saved us a whole lot of money by really pursuing those companies. So he did a really good job.
Continental Bridge really came up to the plate on that one. They gave me all the material for nothing, and so that was good. Thank you.
And now we have Human Resources, John Seaman.
Good morning, Jen Seaman, Human Resources Director, bringing to you a updated severe weather or other situations where building is closed policy. Dennis and I have been discussing this, and our current policy did not have a mechanism for employees. It wasn't really clear, I should say, if we were to have an emergency, what employees, how would they be notified? So we have updated the policy to include a television station, as well as a radio station that would be notified in the event of an emergency, as well as a severe weather hotline. And this number is just going to have a message on it, and employees can call it, and if the building is closed, we would just simply update the message for that day. So instead of having supervisors that have 20 direct reports call every single person, and creating a tree for Dennis and I to then, how do we disseminate the information down? We have this severe weather hotline that we were able to use our current telephone system to set up. So,
And this is mainly, we don't close.
Yeah.
There was back several years ago, I can't remember which of you were the chairman at the time, but
Roger Greiner was chairman.
well, we had one after that where we had to close, but I think it had something to do with a gas situation in one of the buildings, and we closed, and then we received all kinds of grievances from those employees who were 24-hour employees in other departments. Why would, they wanted pay because the others, didn't have to work. And so we have a policy where we don't close, basically, but where we will determine that there is a significant enough situation where employees can use their discretion to use their leave time and not come to work without the appropriate notice, because it might be, difficult for them to get here or whatever. And so that's what we're really talking about, is those days where we would get together and then talk with the chairman and say, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to have this inclement weather issue out there so that employees who might have to come from Fife Lake or wherever could say, I'm going to take a vacation day today, or I'm going to take a personal day today and not work, and then work on a lower level staffing.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the severe weather or other situation where building is closed policy as outlined in the packet dated March 1st, 2011.
Second.
Support by Felice. Commissioner Henschel?
You mentioned other emergencies where this line might be used, such as a gas leak or some other disaster. I just thought it might behoove us to call it something that would be more descriptive than just severe weather, so that employees would know that it's, if there's a wall collapsed in a building, don't come to work kind of thing. It's not just weather.
That's a good point. If it's okay with the board and you pass this to go to the board, perhaps Jen and I can look at that and come up with some better terminology and then have that.
Like severe weather / emergency hotline or something
and have
like
that for you for the board meeting.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Yeah, because it's not just severe weather.
Okay,
You're
Commissioner
correct.
Massbauer?
Dennis, do you have severe weather drills in this building? Where,
We have
tornadoes
fire
can-
drills, those kinds of things. Jen, have we had emergency drills for other purposes?
Tornado?
Yep, the safety committee coordinates that at every building.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Once a year, I believe.
Sure.
I know I've had
What's
one
the reason
since
for
I've been
picking Channel 9 and 10 instead of 7 and 4, when we have 7 and 4 as our local TV?
So it's 9 and 10.
I asked around. So I absolutely willing to change that however you feel. It was
Would
just.
you rather have 9 and 10 on there? We're fine with that.
I meant 7 and 4 instead
Or
of
7 and 4, I'm sorry.
I
Yeah.
asked around and more people said 9 and 10.
There was no reason.
There is no reason.
I would think we'd do both.
All right, let's do both, Jen.
Let's do both.
Okay?
Okay,
We'll make that change.
Thank you.
okay, the mover's okay with the minor changes to the
That's fine.
policy? Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay,
Jen.
now we have Dennis, the administrator's update.
Yep, thank you. I'll go over these fairly quickly, but please interrupt me if you have any questions. Today, there will be a meeting of a project team for the dams who will be doing the initial ranking on engineering teams for the removal of the Brown Bridge Dam. We received 4 bids. We received 5 and 1 dropped out. We have 4 teams of companies that will bid. They have everything from engineering firms to fishery specialists to road construction specialists, and they have put together qualification summaries. They're each about 150 pages. We're going through those, and this morning we'll be ranking those and determining how many of those should be actually interviewed. And this is under the quality-based selection process approved by the state. Right now, I'll tell you, my feeling is all 4 meet the qualifications, and all 4 should be interviewed. Those will be public interviews in this room, and I think they're going to be scheduled for February 17th. The team to do the review has not been selected at this point in time, but I want to let you know that's moving forward, and there will be they'll rank them today and make a determination on how many will actually be interviewed, and those interviews are planned to be held later this month, with the idea that if there's a clear selection of someone that they want to recommend to the city and the county, that will come by the end of the month. We're actually talking about the possibility of a joint city-county meeting that may take place, and this isn't for sure yet, on February 28th, which is the Monday meeting of the study session of the City Commission. And there would be a joint meeting where the implementation team would present their recommendation to you, and then the boards could talk about how they want to proceed. And the reason that the county would be involved in this is because the intention would be that the same engineering team that we use for Brown Bridge, we would use for Sabin and Boardman, not to redo this process again. The continuity seems to be important. So I wanted to give you that heads up and let you know that that's taking place, and of course, board members are welcome. Commissioner Richardson came to the project management team meeting on last Friday morning, and I want you to know that those occur the first Friday of every month, and commissioners are welcome to attend. Commissioner Crothers was there from the city as well, but you folks are always welcome to be at any of those meetings, and I'm going to try to make sure they're all on the calendar, because this is starting to ramp up now, and there's a lot of movement taking place, and I want you to be as aware and involved as you desire to be.
Dennis, on the February 28th meeting, this is just a suggestion, the City Commission study session usually starts at 7 p.m.
Okay.
My guess is there's going to be considerable public comment.
Okay.
You might consider suggesting an earlier start time so people aren't there till 10 or 11 o'clock.
I will talk to Ben about that.
Is that a scheduled study session or a regular?
It is a scheduled
It's a study session,
So they
but-
don't make, does the city commission take action
No.
items up on study sessions?
No, and that may mean that they're going to wait till their first meeting in March to actually act on it.
Or they could call a special meeting.
Right.
Turn the study session into a
So our
special meeting.
participation in the 28th would be just information purposes only?
Not necessarily. I guess my preference was going to be that if all the information was there and the implementation team was charged with putting this together for you, you've actually said that they're charged with the deconstruction, that there would be potential for the two boards to say, give their blessing to this team that was being recommended so that the project could start. If that's not the case and the two boards are not comfortable, so I'm going to talk to Ben about a special meeting, as Commissioner Richardson
Rather
said.
than a study session?
Yeah, but if they're more comfortable with the study session, then my guess would be we would go through the process and then they would take action the following week. It would not be necessary for the county board to take action that following week because this is for the Brown Bridge Dam, but I have to kind of still work through that with Ben.
Okay.
On the dam stuff, I know that there's money involved, and there's money involved both ways, but there's only money to take out the dams, there's no money to repair the dams, even though the cost to repair the dams is less.
Well, that's a matter of opinion or discussion, I think.
Well, it's a matter of the study.
Which is which, but.
I mean,
that's okay.
the study shows, I believe I even have it here, but the study shows that there's a certain cost to repairing the dams. And this is without regard to hydroelectric. To remove the dams, there is a process that's underway and essentially is supported by a number of different agencies, both in the state government and then private concerns and fisheries trust and what have you. They want them gone. I mean, that's their objective. And along the way, along in the whole process, some of the feedback that I've gotten is that those who oppose the idea of removing the dams, their opinions have been pretty much dismissed out of hand and allowed to play, but not allowed to really make any policy influence. I would be interested at some point, as he says, this is ramping up. I'd be interested in perhaps looking at the possibility of letting the people speak out in a different way. And could we set up an ad hoc committee to look at the possibility of establishing a millage to repair the dams?
I understand, speaking only for myself, I understand where you're coming from, but I really think that the process was long, it was heavily invested with the public. The public was in the process, through the whole thing. That joint meeting we had with the city where the decisions were made was probably about the biggest and longest meeting that I've been involved in the short time I've been here. We went on to 11 o'clock that night. I think the newspaper accused us of, making a decision in the dark of night, as it were, but that was because there were so many people who wanted to participate and give public comment. And, not everybody was happy with the decision. But that doesn't mean that the public, that doesn't mean that the decision was made outside of public view. It was made totally in public view with great public participation, in my opinion.
Again, when some things are driven, you have, for example, the DEQ or the MDNRE or whatever its particular name was when this process started. They've got paid people to do this. I mean, literally, the guy is paid, Todd Kalish, he is paid to do what he's doing. You've got special interest groups that want to return the entire stream to a blue ribbon, trout stream beyond the points where it's allowed to now. You've got a number of people who have a special interest. They're either paid to be a part of that, but then you have the citizens who are affected, who they have their regular jobs. Government is not their gig, and to fight it, it's David and Goliath. And I think, at least from a representative standpoint, I think as a commissioner, I'm not doing them any favors if I'm not at least listening to them a little bit more. I'll be perfectly frank. I haven't heard any of the citizens that I've talked to, any of the voters that I've talked to, who are supportive of removing the dam. Most of them say, "Why are we doing this?" Now, my explanation is there is a cost, and there's a cost to remove, and there's a cost to repair, and there's only money to remove.
I will say one thing about the cost. The cost to remove is a one-time cost, and the cost to repair is ongoing, because then you have a maintenance issue for, ad infinitum, if you will. But anyway, Commissioner Inman, then Wheelock.
Well, my personal feeling is that we've done our due diligence as a governmental body. This has probably been the most extensive public informational process, and in terms of involving the people that would be most affected, as well as the general public. In my county commissioner district, there hasn't been one word about the decision that was made to remove the dams, no questions. Quite frankly, the mood of the public today, they're sending me one message. I'm not paying for one more dime in taxes to go to a governmental function. And that would be a very expensive amount. I mean, if we can't get if the number one issue with Grand Traverse County residents is the condition of our roads, and they failed to pass a millage to help support the roads, I just give no relevance to any possibility that the public has any interest in devoting any kinds of large amounts of money to repair and create hydroelectric dams at the cost of the taxpayers. So, I would not be in favor of creating an ad hoc committee, and I think we should just let the process we have in place continue.
Sonny?
Well, the Boardman Rivers Dams Study Committee, however you want to call it, is without question the most open public process I've ever heard of throughout this state or any other state. We've had people come from all over the country to look at the process that we used to involve the public and involve all of these organizations. The one thing that I hear, when we've talked about dams is, the people in my district at least are not willing to pay a dime so as 26 property owners can have lakefront property. And that's what it comes down to. There's 26 property owners on Boardman Pond that will lose their lakefront property. Impoundments are not subject to riparian rights. It's that simple. That's been repeated by multiple legal opinions from multiple legal firms. But the point about this is, this has been a 3.5, 4 years now, open process. Hundreds and hundreds of man-hours have went into these meetings. And, to go back and say, now we're going to reopen the public process is absolutely a step backwards. And I will not support opening this discussion again.
Well, this started when the DNR, I think it was the DNR, came along and said, Brown Bridge Dam has got to have 50-year spillway, 50-year rate. And the truth of the matter is, if they put one in the Brown Bridge, they had to put them in the other two. So you're talking about big repairs or improvements. And what has happened over the years is that first it was Consumers Power, and then it was City Light and Power, when they tried to operate those dams and make a profit off of it, they couldn't do it because there's just not enough water there. There's not enough head, there's not enough horsepower. And I've talked to individuals from consumers and other places, and they all say the same thing. The river's just too small unless you want to fill the whole valley with water. Then you could have a drawdown, which they won't allow anymore, but that's the only way that ever made any money is when they were able to have a drawdown. And so for us to get into fixing those dams up for the green power just doesn't make any sense. The only green that would go into it is the money to fix it.
Larry?
I have to agree with the other comments of the commissioners that were sitting commissioners when this all evolved as I was. But I think I heard Commissioner Henschel state a little earlier when we were talking stimulus money on the energy renewal, oh, it's my grandchild's earnings. Well, this would be your great-grandchild earnings. I'm dead serious. We can't afford to even begin to repair them and maintain them as a county. So it's just not a viable option.
Mr. Henschel?
Obviously, we've had a lot of public input, and the public, as far as I know and as far as Jason's stated, some of them are not comfortable with this decision. And I really get that the commissioners that have been here for a couple of years, just by the way you're looking at me, you're very emotionally vested in this decision because you're tired of it. I get that. All Commissioner Gilman is really saying is if we put it to a millage, then the people vote by popularity. Yes, we will put our dollars in and we will fix these dams up to electrical grade, and we're going to pay for it knowing it's not profitable. And that's giving the people the choice. And I would move that we form the committee to consider a millage so that the people would speak out and we'd be done with it. And if it comes to that you're all right and nobody wants to pay a dime, so be it. But the people spoke and they had their say. And it wasn't in an informational meeting where you just get up and say your piece and you don't seem to make an effect one way or the other. You don't know where you stand. If you've ever spoken at a public meeting, because there isn't a whole lot of response to that.
Okay.
That's my feelings on it, is just let the people decide.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. If I can make another comment, I came into the dams thing, I was running for this office the first time in 2008. I really didn't have an opinion on one way or the other. In fact, if anything, I was leaning toward, well, if we can generate power out of those dams, we ought to, keep them and do what we can to do them. For me, the question came down to, the only logical reason I could see for keeping the dams was as a source of hydroelectric power. And the more I studied it, the more I looked into it, the more it became apparent that the costs involved in repairing the dams and maintaining them over time and the amount of electricity, basically the amount of electricity generated here was static and would always be static, and the amount of money that you could invest in them went this way. And so basically that's how I came down to the decision. I did not perceive any vast conspiracy to remove the dams. Obviously people had their opinions. I talked to a lot of my constituents at the time. Some were for them, some were against them, for varying reasons. But sometimes decisions we make, are not 100%. Not everybody agrees with them, and certainly that's the case on this one. But that's where I came down on it.
As much as I would like to get this discussion over with and done, I am not in favor of ad committee, and to me, I think the Board of Commissioners has a fiduciary responsibility that if we're going to put something on the ballot, it has some relevance to all the residents in the community and not just those individuals serving on the pond. But we do not have this as an agenda item. It would take a 2/3 vote based on our board rules to add this to the agenda, so we could have a...
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think, honestly, what I would suggest, since this is, I would say that you should put this on as an agenda item. I'm going to rule the motion out of order. I'm going to say put it on an agenda item for next week at Ways and Means. And you can bring it up then, if that's, if that's acceptable to anyone.
Should I go ahead and do that?
Yeah,
I'll put it on there.
Okay. All right.
I'm glad you made that motion. I think it's suitable, but, I just wanted everybody to know that I went to almost every meeting we had for the Boardman River Dams committees, and I was the representative almost continuously. I, like Ross, went into that with the idea that how do we save power? There were some decisions that were made along the way that really determined how the decision was going to be made by the city and the county commissions. The City Light and Power pulling out and then selling the equipment really pretty well sealed the effort to be able to make that decision. But I think that the public was heard over and over and over. And every single time that there was an issue brought up, the committee went ahead and did another study because they asked for it. The people in the community asked for each of those individual studies to be made, and they were extremely expensive, and they were very, very well done. I mean, I went out on the river a couple of times myself as they were doing some of these surveys, and because the people of the community said, we want this. We want you to study the temperature. We want you to study the fish and aquatic life. We want you to study whether or not power could be generated out of these things. And each one of those things were continually studied very, very well. And a study is there. And the other day I thought, well, I'm going to look for all the stuff I have for the Boardman River Dams Committee. I have a stack that tall of all the stuff that I have from that committee. And the community was heard, and when the final decision came down, it was a split decision as to whether or not we should keep them or whether we should get them out of there. I was not here when the commission decided to take those out. That was the decision of the county commission and the decision of the city commission. So I think that we have been heard. We've done our due diligence. We've done our job, and we are in the process. And I think any time you start looking at stopping the process today will be a major detriment to the donors that are coming to the table and starting putting money there. I think that would be a huge, huge mistake on our part, to stop that process, because it's the snowball coming down the hill, and don't get in the way of it because it's coming down. So I just can't see us trying to go out and continue and look at stopping this process.
Mr. Chairman, this ongoing discussion
Yeah,
should happen when we
point,
discuss this.
thank you.
We are in the middle of the administrator's report.
Well, that's true, and the only reason I let Herb speak is because he was trying to get a word in edgewise before that. So anyway, honestly, at this point, I would say we're done with this issue. We are going to talk about it next week, so.
May I ask for information for next week's meeting?
Yes, you may.
Dennis, what I would like in next week's packet is an estimate as to what the millage cost, and I'm talking about, let's assume 1 mill generates $4.5 million, because I know 1/10 of a mill generated, $450,000 for the senior center, so I'm assuming that, it's $4.5 million. How many mills would be required for an election, and what that would cost the typical homeowner based upon repair of the dams?
I would think that would be one of the topics that if an ad hoc committee were actually formed, that was one of the things they would have to determine.
I understand that.
And that
but
to me is probably the hardest question, is
I
how
don't think
much
it would
money.
probably take much to put that together, would it? I mean, you have the numbers from the engineering firm.
Yeah, we have the engineering.
I'll do that.
Thank
I'll
you.
do the best I can.
But you're only looking at 2 dams. We only control 2 of the dams. We don't control the other 2.
I know.
That's true. Okay. You want to go on with the
Yes.
administrator's report? Update? Thank you.
Thank you all the commissioners who participated in the budgeting for outcomes interviews that we did with the 2 consultants. They will now take 2 weeks. I'm having one more conference call with each of them. They still both have some more additional questions, and then they'll have 2 weeks to put their proposals together. I was encouraged by the number of commissioners that participated, and I want to thank you for your interest in that. Once those proposals are done, we're going to ask for those proposals to be broken out into various components of their process, and along with a timeline and a cost. We'll be bringing that back to you for further discussion. So I just wanted to thank you for taking the time. I had an opportunity to meet last week with the interim airport director, Kevin Klein. I was quite impressed with him. He seems to have a really good handle on what's going on out at the airport, and particularly what the mood of the community is and the airlines. And let me just say that in summary, this is a really kind of crucial time for airline service in this county and in this region. And the competition is really amazing. But I think he has a really good handle on it. I think he understands the need to engage the community in issues related to the airport, and I think he's gotten that direction from his airport commission, and I feel good about his understanding of what needs to be done out there. So I just wanted to convey that to you. We'll be meeting regularly. We set up, I think, every 2 months we'll be having a meeting to discuss. Remember, this is a jointly owned airport between the county, Grand Traverse and Leelanau County. But Eric Klein, the administrator from Leelanau, met with us as well, and we're going to meet every 2 months to just kind of keep up to speed on what's going on out at that airport. So I just wanted to convey that to you. We've made some progress in looking at the Old Tom's building at the mall. We have, first of all, the owner's representatives made it clear they are not willing or able to sell that building to us. I consider that not a positive response. I think we could have been better. You know, there's always this, you always envision that in a foreclosure, when the bank takes it over, you know, you can get it for so many cents on a dollar, right, kind of thing. This is tied up as a national, this is part of a national bond indebtedness that includes many, many properties, they told me, in terms of, like, in the hundreds of properties that were part of one bond issue and cannot be in any way separated. They can, however, lease. And so they've given us some initial lease numbers, and we're going to be running those through this, and they're talking in the order of a 10-year lease with possible 2 5-year renewals, just at the very beginning of discussions. They also, I thought it was important to tell you, they also have another, they have a written proposal for that building, for another grocery complex. And so I thought that was kind of a relevant issue, and should be passed on to you as well. So we continue to look at that. We finally found the right people after 2 weeks of calls to have and we had a phone discussion with them this Monday morning. So we'll be cranking some numbers together and getting some ideas, and the architect has moved to looking at that evaluation of that building. I'm going to try to accelerate the look at the cost, because I think that might be a relevant number. I can tell you right now that I believe we're looking in the rental cost of about $250,000 a year, with a 3 to 4 month reprieve on rental during construction. That's kind of where they want to be. I think there's some movement we might be able to get on that.
Do we have an idea of how much our current health services building would be worth empty?
No, we don't have an appraisal on that. I know that we paid, no, I can't tell you that. I want to say we paid almost $3 million for that building. 2?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was somewhere in that area. We just paid it off. We now own the building outright, but Commissioner, I can get you an idea of that, but we don't have a formal appraisal. Next thing, you know, I think I told you we've done DK Security has done a security review of this building and put together a number of proposals. We met again Monday, and we are going to be making a recommendation to you on some things that could be done, and we'll give you several levels of priority that you might want to consider for the building based on their recommendations. I'll tell you that some of the easy things we've already just done. They're, you know, things that didn't cost money, they've already been taken care of. You'll notice the stairway door, for example, on the first floor has been locked now, and you have to come through the glass doors just as a minor thing. And that's only so we can see everyone who's coming into the building. And so we've done things like that, put new locks on the treasurer's vault room, and resecured the keys on that. A number of things like that. But next month, we'll be bringing you this proposal to let you look at it. And I understand the financial situation, so there will be tiered recommendations for you to look at, and we'll just need some direction from you on that. The Senior Center intergovernmental agreement, the Commission on Aging had some changes to that they wanted to see made, so I have a meeting Friday morning with Ben Bifus to go over those changes and to hopefully get the city's concurrence that they're willing to make those changes. I think they're mostly clarification, so that means we probably won't see the intergovernmental agreement until March because of the changes that need to be made and the timing of our committee meetings. I wanted to also report to you that the Sheriff's Sergeant Union has decided to switch union representation. They are moving from Teamsters to what we call POAM. They'll be known as COAM, but they'll be going from Teamsters to Pat Spiedel's unions, and they'll be represented by Pat's unions as of now. And so we've begun negotiations with their change in unions. That was petitioned something like 6 months ago, and the vote came out to go to the new union. I'm going to have a meeting, I think this week. We're scheduled with the chairman and our other Indian Affairs representative, Commissioner Gilman. We're going to sit down at the tribe's request to have more discussion about intergovernmental law enforcement agreement. We're inviting the prosecutor and the sheriff. I believe they're bringing their attorney and their sheriff just to have another initial discussion to try to resurrect this. You know, the tribe has been consistent since I've been here in almost 10 years of requesting this. And we are the only county within their 5-county region that has not signed this intergovernmental agreement for service delivery. And so we're going to resurrect those discussions again with this new sheriff. He's already aware, and we'll see what kind of progress we can make on that. So just wanted to let you know that that meeting will be taking place, and it'll be primarily informational, but be represented by your 2 commissioners at that meeting. Finally, and this is something I do need some direction on, in the past, commissioners have expressed concern about my position and the direction that I've given in terms of replacing the DPW director. And there are some commissioners who feel that we should have replaced this director long ago. I have not done that simply because it's been the desire of the township supervisors to use other mechanisms, Ross Childs, a management contract, and I thought the philosophy of this board was that they're paying the bill and that they should have some say in how this happens. Remember, this is the result of Chris Boudet being on leave, military leave. We've had several correspondence back and forth with him. You may have seen in the paper, the first week in January, I posted to advertise for a replacement director for that position. And that was after consulting with the head of the Water and Sewer Committee, Chuck Korn, to say, okay to do this. Well, after it came out, he said to me, oh, I misunderstood what you were doing. I don't think we want to do that. And so we have all these applications that I've sent to them, and with the idea that we would hire a director. I have now been told by those township supervisors through Ross Childs that they do not want to hire a director, that they want to contract with someone as an interim, filling the in an interim way to fill the position until such a time that Chris Boudet comes back. Chris was due back this April, has indicated it won't be April, but it could be as soon as a month after that. He does not know. So I need to get a clarification from this board. Is it the wish of this board for me to go ahead? I don't even know that I really have the authority to go ahead and hire a director without those township supervisors or the Board of Public Works agreeing. Do you want me to go ahead and hire someone without their concurrence? They are meeting tomorrow, and they've told me they will vote to say they want to contract, not to hire someone. And is it your intention for me to move forward in hiring a director, or do you want to acquiesce to the wishes of those townships and let them hire a contract individual or firm?
If you hire somebody, you're actually creating another job, because you can't cut him loose.
We have a responsibility to bring him back when he returns from his service.
Well, Dennis, as you know, I've been one of the commissioners who's been critical of the fact that we do not have a full-time DPW director. And if I've never stated my position clearly, my position, I'll do it now, my position has been and is that we do need a full-time director, whether that is contracted or a full-time hiring position doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is that the DPW has the management it needs, freeing up perhaps Rothschilds or someone else to go out and really look for special waste. Because I do believe there's some out there, and I think there are opportunities out there, but you cannot, at least in my view, you cannot expect one individual working part-time to run an entire department and go out and look for special waste. That's just my view.
Well, and I agree with that, Commissioner. I agree with that view. I wish they would see the value in spending their money to have someone in there full-time and someone out there to do this
And I have to tell you, I truly believe that part of the reason that we're writing checks for the septic treatment facility is because they haven't had that particular arrangement. Now, my question for you, Dennis, is does Chris Bidet report and work for you, or does he report and work for the townships?
Under the law, Chris Boudet would report and work, under the law, he would report and work to the Board of Public Works.
Okay.
But the Board of Public Works, the county board, and the townships passed resolutions saying that they wanted that position to be managed by me and overseen by me. Okay. So I have responsibility to manage that person in that position. It's unclear to me whether that means I have the authority to fill the position against the wishes of the Water and Sewer Committee and the Board of Public Works. And that's what I'm asking for direction on. Because I do believe it should be full-time. I agree with you on that. They have not chosen to do that. And historically, this county board has always deferred to them since the money was being spent by them. And all I'm asking is, do you want to continue to defer to them, or should we take action to do something that may be contrary to what they're looking for? And quite frankly, they may be saying now, hey, we want to have somebody full-time. I don't know that, but that's not been their position in the past, and I think they should reconsider that. And I hope to be there to ask them to reconsider that. But I do need some direction from you, because I don't want this misunderstanding, or I want to know what my rights and role is. I do not want to be held accountable for not filling that position full-time if you as a board feel that's what I should be doing rather than deferring to the townships.
Well, Commissioner Fleets and then
I
Commissioner...
wasn't finished.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Dennis, if there is a resolution that position is managed by you and your role is unclear, and I'm hearing that it is unclear, and I agree with you, I think that what the county board needs to do is ask that the Board of Public Works clarify that role. And if indeed your role is only to manage, I think we need to relook at our relationship as far as funding goes.
Commissioner Fleets, then Commissioner Redmond.
Dennis, I think a contracted position would be far better than an employee position, and I would like to see you talk to the BPW tomorrow and see if they're in agreement for a full-time contracted position, and if they are, to expedite the hiring of the qualified person to fill that, because once Chris returns. If he wants his job back, we don't have that obligation hanging over our head.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And if they're paying the bill, I certainly think it should be their decision. And I think you should question them as to the question you have about your authority there. But I don't know why we would even argue with them, employee versus contracted. If they say contracted, contracted it is.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think they've made it very clear. They believe they have the decision on how many hours this person should work. There's no question in my mind about that. I don't think they have any interest whatsoever in me dictating that.
And I think that Chris's comments are well taken, and I agree with her, that should they have a full-time position person there, that would free up, say, Ross Childs or another person to be the salesman, if you will.
Well, I just want to conclude that I agree with both the comments from Chris Maxbauer and Larry Fleece with regard to the need to making sure that we have full-time attention not only to sewer and water, but to the septic treatment plant and other duties that they have. And we have had really kind of a unique, I would say unique and special relationship with the townships that own and operate sewer and water system in this partnership that we have formed. My sense is that they would like to have the controlling vote on the management of their system, and I agree with that they should have. And the fact that a lot of these township supervisors may or may not be full-time or may not have the ability to manage a Department of Public Works director, and has asked the county to step in and help facilitate as part of the partnership arrangement. I am fine with that. I think whatever they wish us to do, and if we can help, I think that's part of our role, is to assist and help them in this arrangement that we have. So I'm willing to go with whatever the recommendation is, in terms of how they want to fill this spot. My preference would be to have somebody full-time, so you can go out and have some devoted time towards finding more flow and paying greater attention to the revenue stream and other out-of-the-box suggestions and ideas to keep this ball rolling to make this plant more economically feasible. So I don't want to I don't want to leave Dennis in a position where I think it should be clarified, and I don't want to leave Dennis in a position in any of the minds of the county commissioners that he's not performing what is expected out of him. And I think it's right for him to bring this subject up. And I think if the townships agree that this is the way they want to go, then we should concur and move on.
Lemkool and then Wheelock.
Do you need a motion to do this, or are you just looking at head nodding?
No, I just wanted some clarification. Here's what my plan would be. I will, I'm supposed to be at that Parks meeting in the morning, but I will change that. I will be at this meeting, and I will encourage them that the board's, kind of the consensus of the board is we think it needs a full-time attention, but that ultimately it's their decision as to how they want to handle that until Chris comes back. Do I understand that? Does that seem the
that would be my thing, but I think I'd like to see you go one step further.
Okay.
I think that the organization of this whole structure is so ridiculous that I think some sort of a solution to be brought back to our commission or to them to be able to determine how do we get rid of G5, the Sewer and Water Committee, and start making it a Board of Public Works. Who do we put on that committee, and how do we make sure that that happens so that it becomes a well-run organization? Having 3 different organizations try to run it is probably the most. 4 different organizations trying to run this. That is not the way to run this thing, and I think that's part of the problem. Yep. So when you start doing it, I really feel strongly though that that they are in charge of making a determination as to who's going to be there and how often they're going to be there. They've only asked us to manage the person, not to be able to determine who's going to be there and all that. They should be the ones that determine who they're going to hire and what they're going to hire. So, but I think we need to go to the next step, though, and have them bring some sort, or you bring some sort of a resolution to the structure as soon as we can.
Well, you know that's been proposed.
I know it has been, but we haven't seen it here.
Well, that's because they have legislation that is being introduced to expand the size of that board from 9 to 11. Going from 9 to 11 would allow the townships to have a majority of 6 on that board and still meet the statutorial positions that have to be there, such as the drain commissioner. So we've been assured by our senator and our representative that they will be introducing that language so that that can be changed. And I think they've determined that that's kind of key to making that change. And the idea there is once that's in place, all these other subcommittees go away.
Good.
Okay, Sonny, and then Dick.
Well, you know.
You don't need to, you just said it.
Oh, all right, thank you.
You know, I think, this is an ongoing discussion. We talked about it in our strategic planning session, the reorganization of the Board of Public Works. This is an ongoing discussion we're not going to fix this morning. First, Dennis, I understand it's their money, and I'm not going to tell them how to spend their money. So whether it's a contract with a firm or whether it's a contract with an individual. And I guess, to me, that's the discussion that you need to have with them, is whether they're willing to contract an individual or do they solely want to contract with a with a firm. Because, either one is a contract.
Yeah, I think either one of them they're okay with.
So I think that's what you need to talk to them about. But again, it is their money.
Yep.
And I'm not going to tell them how to spend their money. But, when we talk about a partnership, this partnership has been here a long time. It generally has served the community well, but in many ways it's been pretty one-sided. We've helped them with their bonding, we've helped them with a lot of issues, we've helped them with financial issues, but we take the responsibility as far as the public's concerned, but we have nothing to say about how the decisions are made. And that's always been an issue with me.
Okay. Oh, Chris?
The county board has given the Board of Public Works a great deal of money for the septic treatment facility. I happen to agree with Commissioner Thomas's comments that in all likelihood that septic treatment facility, and heaven forbid, but is probably going to end up in the lap of the county board. But my concern is, again, I think that the special waste issue has to be addressed. We are loaning the Board of Public Works for the septic treatment facility money, and I'm not seeing, in my view, I'm not seeing any way for the Board of Public Works to repay that money in their fee structure, and I have a real concern about that. So I do think that we need to have the Board of Public Works clarify Dennis's position, number one, and I think we should ask the Board of Public Works in writing what their position is as far as Dennis's management. Does he indeed hire and fire? Or do they only want him to manage the director? And I think the answer should affect the Board of Commissioners' willingness to, and I know we've already voted on it, to continue loaning money to a septic treatment facility that doesn't have any, I guess I just don't have any reasonable expectation that we're going to be repaid. But so I would like to see us in writing say, what is our administrator's role in your view?
Okay. Dennis, does that give you enough to move forward?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else? Oh, Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Going back to you've got a pile of applications.
Yes.
Is that something that you can hand over to someone who is in the BPW? I mean, those groups, let them choose from those to contract with, or are those people who would be?
Some of these people are people that are in other current jobs that are unlikely that would leave to take a contract, but there are a number, and we've identified them for the BPW. There are a number of them that may consider a contract, so we've asked them to at least look at these people along with the other contracting that they do.
The only thing I would say is that I would hope that you would, convince the Board of Public Works that they need to do something about, the void at the top. And, whatever that is,
Yep, I agree.
Because you keep referring to they. When you say they, are you referring to the Board of Public Works as a whole, or are you referring to
No.
certain township supervisors?
Well, what I'm saying, someone said it earlier, there are 6 township supervisors that serve on the Water and Sewer Committee, and contrary to what, they occasionally express to you, in 99% of the time, whatever that Sewer and Water Committee recommends, that's what the Board of Public Works has done. It's ever since I've been here. So when I say they, I'm talking about the township supervisors. And I think they're the key to this. And I think they're the ones that, kind of set the policy and the tone for how the Board of Public Works moves. And I think they're the ones we have to work with primarily.
Larry?
Just a comment on Herb's comment. Dick and I were at Blair last night, and the Blair board, after Pat Paul explained it, authorized the expenditure of funds for Blair's 1/6. And legally, they've engaged a company, and they're moving ahead, like whether it's going to be an authority or whatever, but they are moving ahead, so.
That's good. And Ross is leaving. That's critical.
Yeah, Ross is leaving in, what, 2 months?
Yeah.
April 1st. More or less.
April.
Okay, anything more from the administrator's
No,
update?
that's all.
Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. First item is the ad hoc committee on the recommendation regarding the meeting times. I was the chairman of this ad hoc, so very simply, we met. There were 4 on the committee. Unfortunately, Commissioner Max Bauer was not able to attend, but I think she was under the weather at that point.
Well, big time.
And big time. And so it was Wheelock, me, and Henschel who met. And after some discussion, there was a recommendation. It was not unanimous. It was a split vote of 2-1 to recommend that we hold all 4 of our monthly meetings on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. After that vote, I had a discussion with Ben Byfoss because of the question of the availability of the room. That is, the Traverse City Planning Commission meets 2 of the 4 Wednesday nights, the first and third. And basically what Byfoss told me was that the city would basically get out of the way, that if the county chose to hold our meetings on Wednesday night, the city would not stand in the way. They would find another way to deal with the planning commission. Dick?
Personally, I don't care whether we meet in the morning or in the evening. And I know part of this is an attempt to get more public in here, and I don't know that's going to happen, but one concern I have is that this is going to be much more inconvenient for employees and department heads to come, because they'll have to come back in to be at a meeting. And I don't know if you addressed that or not, but that's always been something that we've had to consider over the years, and that's why, the main reason why we kept it in the morning, because somebody could come to work and come to a meeting and when he had business here, and I know what you're going to say, and that's fine, but
Okay, Fleece first. And
I
then
didn't see it addressed.
I would make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the ad hoc committee to have all county meetings at 7 p.m. on Wednesday evenings in commission chambers effective April 1st, 2011.
Support.
Okay. Do I have discussion? Mr. Wheelock?
Well, I guess, Dick, we did discuss that, and Dennis was there in attendance at that meeting too, and said that basically the information that we get from staff comes from department heads who are salaried employees, and they would be here to make their presentations.
I just want everybody to be aware of it.
One of the discussions that went into this was who sits in our chairs. As we look at election times and different things, the opportunity for I'm going to say the average individual in our community to serve in this position is not possible when we've now been here going on 2 hours in the middle of the week on a work day, that I could not possibly give one of my employees the flexibility to sit in this position. So as we try to get more community involvement, both from the public and from those people that are interested to serve as commissioners, we need to make it easier for them to fit it into their schedules. And the evening does generally do that.
Herb?
Yeah, this is going to interfere with my Wednesday night's commitment already, and so I will not be voting in favor of it. But also, I really feel that the evening meetings or daytime meetings does not deter somebody from running for county commission. I think it's the number of meetings and the time commitment that everybody has to spend. It's not what time the meetings are going to be held, it's how much time you're going to spend going to all the other meetings that you have to go to.
I think it's really important that we accept their recommendation based purely, not on convenience, but based purely on individuals that would like to be county commissioners. I started with the city back in 1968, and I used to see county commissioners coming in for a lot of years to attend meetings. And I used to think, this is crazy. How can a working person run for county commission, whether it be a man or a woman? And I think opening this office to the availability of men and women that want to run for county commissioner is far more valuable and outweighs any other consideration that we should give. I'm 100% in favor of it, and I'll give you a 36-year example. Prior to my being seated as District 8's commissioner, Clarence Klaus was the county commissioner, retired farmer, 20 years. When Clarence retired from the commission, he was near 80 or 80. His daughter, Virginia Oles, was then the county commissioner in District 8 for the next 16 years. So consequently, and Virginia was retired. At the time she took this position, she had worked at the state hospital. So if you look, we have 36 years of District 8 commissioners, number one by the same family, which I think is spectacular in itself, and they were both retired before they were able to take a position on this commission. And I think we need to avoid that. I think we need to make it open to working individuals.
Oh, thanks.
Pardon?
See, oh, thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Billman.
Well, I was kind of ambivalent on this. I mean, for me, I can go at any time. It matters very little. The accessibility thing is one that I like, and it appealed to me originally. However, as was, I think, inferred by Commissioner Lemko's comments, there are a whole number of other meetings that go on. Yesterday it was a Finance Committee meeting. Last night it was a meeting out at the Peninsula Township Board for me. And in any given week, any one of us has 3 or 4 of them, and many of them are in the middle of the day or otherwise. Now, we have a full board meeting at the end of the month at 7 p.m. or, that's available to those people who aren't able to make it to these committees of the whole the rest of the month. And in this way, it's a balance. If somebody can't make it to the full board meeting, they can make it and they can have their opinions expressed if they want to. We don't see a lot of folks. We have two members of the public out here today. But there's a balance and there's an opportunity for people to have input at different times. And as far as the ability to serve, I'm not sure that it makes much of a difference what time the meetings are held. So I would have to vote no on the changing of the times.
Well, for me, it's about the accessibility to people who want to be county commissioners, but it's also about accessibility to the public. One of the things I've always liked about the city is that everybody knows they meet every Monday night at 7 o'clock. The county, you have to almost sort of hunt and pick. It was even worse before we consolidated the subcommittees. You had 4 different committees that met on Tuesday and Wednesday mornings at 7:30, one that met at Tuesday at 5, and then the final one at 7. I would say that our final meeting at 7 is usually by far the best attended of the meetings that we have. But by then, most of the discussion's already been had. I mean, we've already discussed all the issues, voted on them, and then bring them forward to, for basically what amounts to final ratification. The other issue is that we're also televised now. So if most people aren't going to turn their TV on at 7:30 in the morning, to watch what the county commission is up to. And if you want to watch it on tape delay, I mean, you can, but then you have to hunt around and figure out when it's on. So again, the idea that, for those interested in county business, and obviously there are, many who are, to know that it's every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock means that what we do is accessible to the public at large. Henschel, then Gilman.
There seems to be this misconception that everybody works during the day. I don't think I've ever had a job where I wasn't at least working nights sometimes. I think I have to take issue with that thought and just remind everybody that, we've got people working evenings. Think about the people who work at the Grand Traverse Mall or the Cherryland Mall or dozens of department stores we have. We've got, every gas station in town is manned by people that work at night. Most of the waitresses in town, bowling alleys, movie theaters, taxi drivers, hotel clerks, furniture stores, people that work the fire and ambulance services in the evenings. They're manning those, and Munson certainly has a huge staff in the evening. To say that we're serving the public and becoming more accessible by making all of our meetings at night is fallacy, in my opinion. The fact is, we currently have meetings that accommodate both AM and PM workers. And if accessibility is your concern, then our current meeting structure is appropriate. And it doesn't make a world of difference to me when our meetings are, but I really have to take issue with claiming that this is for public accessibility when it's really for personal reasons, whatever that be, work or personal. The fact is, if we change our meeting times, we are less accessible. Okay? I see government bodies doing things like closing on Fridays and saying this is for public accessibility, and I really disagree with that. I think it's a shame. And anybody that runs a business and tries to run things like that and say we're more accessible to the public will quickly find out that your income will be lower by making those decisions. And somehow in government we're insulated from the consequences like that because people pay their taxes whether you're open or not. So I will not be voting to move the meeting times.
Okay. Jason, do you have something more?
I think we're,
okay. Dick, and then Larry?
When this first came up, I could really go either way, to be personally honest with everyone here. And I will tell you that my employer, Empire Bank, and then Huntington Bank, had to take special consideration. And it had to go up the ladder right to the top in terms of having, number one of their employees as an elected official. And what impact would that have on the company and the relations with, what they were doing in terms of a product sale. And two, my time and effort away from the office. And it was eventually worked out that they would allow an employee to run for an elected office, but there was no forgiveness for, what was expected out of me in terms of my product, taking care of my customers, and consequently I made a personal decision that I would like to do this particular job and work for the bank for 28 years, and this is my 19th year, I guess, on the board. And basically, I'll tell you what, I had to do double time. I had to go in on weekends, I had to go in at night, I had to do a lot of personal sacrifice to work for an employer and to be a county commissioner. Now, had those meetings been solely at night, it would have been a lot easier on me and a lot easier on my employer, to be honest with you. Now, in terms of accessibility to the public, believe me, we're accessible. We're on TV, we got webcasting, we've got phone calls, we got phones at home, we got emails at home, and we go to our township meetings. We are very accessible to the public in terms of what opinions are going on. The paper, reports generally of what occurs, and, the people will call me on stories, and if they take the time to watch, they do call me. They do have an opportunity at the end of the month to come in and make their final say. But there are challenges for individuals that have jobs of the nature I had, and I guess I understand everyone's plea here. If you basically have commitments with your family in the evening and other things going involved in your life, I mean, technically you'd want to get it over early in the morning and get on to your work life and get home and be with your family. So it goes both sides of the fence. So, it's not a right decision, wrong decision. But I will lean towards the recommendation made by the ad hoc committee.
It still doesn't matter to me whether we meet in the morning or the evening. I gotta tell you, when we used to go around to the townships and meet here every other, or whatever, we used to get a bigger turnout at the townships than we ever get here. So for us to do this for the benefit of the public, I'm sorry, it doesn't work very well. They just they don't come here.
For myself personally, it doesn't matter if I meet in the morning or the afternoon. I do think that the majority of people do work during the day, and to be more accessible to the public, that you should schedule some meetings. But had I been at the ad hoc committee, and I'm sorry I wasn't, what I would have suggested, and what I suggest right now, is, regarding elected officials, Commissioner Fleece, if someone runs for county board and they cannot make meetings during the day, I think it's the responsibility of the Board of Commissioners to find a time when everyone can meet as a committee as a whole, to accommodate a commissioner that simply can't meet during the day. That being said, I would like to see us compromise. Perhaps do public safety in the morning, resource management, move resource management to a Wednesday evening. Do 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening. It's just an idea, and I'm seeing Commissioner Thomas grimace.
Well, I think everyone's pretty much weighed in. We have a motion. I'm willing to call the motion unless people need to talk some more.
I just want to make one quick note. If all of our meetings are on Wednesday nights, it also affects people that are in our faith communities, that traditionally Wednesday night is a church night with activities, and I would also not support it for that reason as well.
All right.
One last comment. We did have a mixed situation in the previous board in commissions where we had the committee system during the morning and Ways and Means in the evening, and our regular board meeting in the evening. And to be honest with you, it had absolutely no effect on public participation coming into our meetings when we switched Ways and Means to the evening, just as a note.
Okay. All right.
I don't care what time it is, not long, as long as it's not 5 o'clock. That's when the bear eats.
I just one note before we vote, Mr. Chairman. Just the effective date of April 1. I'm fine with that. I want to give the board notice that a year ago I had purchased a ticket to deal with my mother's home, which I'm still doing, and I had booked it, assuming that we would have a morning meeting in April.
We will survive your absence.
Yeah,
if
survive my absence, and I don't see a reason to delay it to the May. but
Empire Bank survived its absence for
Right.
16 years.
So, if this does go forward, if you can excuse me
Okay.
out of the April meeting.
All right.
You haven't noticed that things go a lot faster when you're not here.
Okay,
There's a roll call.
in that case, we'll call a vote here by roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Lemkool?
No.
Henschel?
No.
Inman?
Yes.
Gilman?
No.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Fleece?
Yes.
Max Power?
No.
Richardson?
Yes.
5-4.
5-4.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, now we have the referral from Commissioner Lemkool on the remonumentation resolution.
Yeah, when I was here before, that was one of the bigger issues as to how the state was funding remonumentation. And so, I've asked our surveyor to give us an idea as to where we're at, what's happening with it, and whether or not this is a good resolution for us to be able to also to sign.
Robert Mitchell, County Surveyor. Good morning.
Morning, Bob.
In November 18th, a memorandum was put out by the Office of Land Survey and Monumentation, which is the regulatory authority for the rules and guidelines of the remonumentation program. Basically, it's Memorandum 16. There's been memorandums, I guess it would follow, there's been 15 before, since 1993. In 1993, when the remonumentation program was set up, they also had a board of surveyors that basically ran policy for the remonumentation program. They were appointed surveyors from around the state, maybe one from UP, Southern Michigan, Northern Michigan, and whatever. Well, it wasn't long after the remonumentation program got passed that the state eliminated the input of surveyors and took it over as an employable job within the state system. And now Mr. Lampert is a surveyor, is the director of survey and monumentation at the state, and he put together a memo 16 containing some changes on how this program is supposed to be run, and it's been running since 1993 pretty effectively. Some of the things in here are just rehashed from things that are probably okay. But there's a few things in here that I believe that I don't necessarily agree with, and it's my own personal opinion. It's not the opinion of the county. A couple of things, little things like the state now is not going to fund monument boxes that go with the monument when you put the monument in. They say that this is the responsibility of the road commission. Well, the logistics of working all that out and getting the road commission to pay for a monument box, at the time you're setting the corner and going through all that baloney, it just doesn't work. The reality of it is, I've ordered monument boxes. I've got a supply of them. I keep a couple years ahead. If any of the contract surveyors need a monument box, well, we get them a monument box, and when they put in the corner in, it gets done. It gets cemented in, the box gets put down, and you don't have logistics of dealing with the road commission. Well, you're going to order boxes, and how many you need, and I keep a supply there, and I don't know if I'm going to need them on every corner or not. There's old boxes that are there, and a lot of times we can reuse them. In fact, we use a lot of them and reuse them, and they put new covers on them or whatever. That's one issue. They say that the cost associated with any accessories to that corner can't be included in the grant. Like, I suppose some counties are putting in carcinite fiberglass posts on the side of the road that says this is a survey marker, do not disturb, or whatever. Maybe putting in some kind of fancy witness tags or some tree tags that say, public land corner, do not destroy. we haven't, in Grand Traverse County, we haven't gone that far to put these other things in. A lot of the corners that aren't on roads in Grand Traverse County are generally in state ownership. And the state has their own little system for putting accessories around the corner so people know where they're at. And so I haven't, initiated any programs that would call for adding additional accessories and those kinds of things. I don't spend the money on it, but I'm sure other counties do, and it shouldn't be excluded from the cost of remonument in a corner. They also have taken the position that no grant monies will be used for revisiting a corner. And we've been pretty fortunate in Grand Traverse County. We've revisited one of them I messed up on, and there was another contractor that messed up on 2 or 3 of them. That was because the state found some additional information, and we ended up moving them. And on the case of the corner I did, of course I fixed it at no cost of remount program, and the other contractor did the same thing. But unfortunately, in Grand Traverse County, the corners have been pretty well done, and we don't have a lot of redo stuff. But in some of the other counties, based on my working in other counties, there's some problems. And I feel like if the grant program doesn't allow for individual counties to use county funds to reevaluate new evidence or look at the corner again, it'll just never happen. And consequently, there'll be a corner out there that has conflicting evidence that'll never be resolved. That's the biggest one, gripe I had with Memo 16. The other one, there's a provision on to reduce the amount of money that can be utilized for administrative services, county surveyor doing the paperwork and providing everything that makes for compliance with the grant and all the reporting, running the peer review groups, just the general duties of the county surveyor and the county representative, the grant administrator. They reduced the administrative services portion of the contract to 10% out of 100 instead of 30. And under the current monumentation grant monies in the last couple of years, that would amount to maybe $5,000 out of $50,000 that were allowed. I think they've done an amendment to that and allowed it to raise to 15%. But it's still half of what it was before. I don't think that's sufficient. I just don't think that's an adequate amount.
So do you think that this memorandum number resolution would be a good resolution for us to send back to them, the way it's written?
What I've seen through emails, I've seen resolutions by different counties to ask for administrative hearing on memorandum 16 to voice any concerns, and there's been several counties that have already submitted those. I would be willing to, if the county wants to ask for administrative hearing and pass a resolution, obviously I'd be willing to go to Lansing on the day of that hearing and represent the county in what I believe is their best interest.
Bob, you and I have had discussions before about this whole remonumentation program, of how effective it is in the first place. We've been doing this since 1993, and what percentage of the county, or how many of the county's corners do we truly have?
We're about 60% done.
So we're gaining.
Yeah.
But this thing was supposed to be done in 20 years, right? Wasn't it 20 years when it was originally started?
Well, it's supposed to be done in 20 years, but you have to realize that a couple of things have happened here. The formula for funding, the money for the grant program is generated from recording fees, okay? And then there used to be a 3-tier formula to determine how each county got their money. One was based on population, one based on area, and the Category 3 funding was what counties were willing to add additional monies into the program, and they would get that money back the following year, in addition to their normal grant. So that's how they came up with the funding process. Well, as it works out, for example, this year, Grand Traverse County is getting $55,000 or $57,000, whatever the number is. And Wayne County is getting $485,000, and Oakland County is getting $379,000 under the formula. If you just run the raw numbers, Wayne County has already received somewhere in the neighborhood between $8 and $12 million for the remonumentation program. I can tell you right now, if we had between $8 and $12 million to do Grand Traverse County, we'd have gold-plated monument boxes out there. Yeah, that's right. And we'd all be driving Cadillacs. That's the problem with the program. There should have been initially, there should have been a ceiling set so that the counties that have more recording, Wayne County, Oakland, and so forth, when they reach that ceiling, then the formula is redistributed so that Marquette County, that's got 12 times the corner as Grand Traverse County does, would get some of that funding to get their system done, to get their county done, or distribute it. So that's part of the problem why Grand Traverse County is only at 60%. And I think we're in line with a lot of the other counties. There's other counties that have done corners are cheaper and take a low bid, and those counties are having all kinds of problems right now, redoing corners, and not just one or two, a bunch of them.
This is one of these areas where I had little experience or little knowledge prior to even starting the discussion about this. Is this something that affects, in the end, it affects titles, corrections and property lines, and I mean, does this add expense to the county? If this process were not here, would this have resulted in?
Actually, this process ultimately, sure, it might disclose some conflicts, but ultimately, it's a real saver for the public.
I guess that's what I was asking. Sans this particular project. Okay, thank you.
As a surveyor, if a public land corner is going through the remonumentation program, if I'm out there surveying, just for example, in another county, and I come across a corner that's been remonumented, and I find evidence to the contrary, and I don't agree with it, then I'm not bound to use that corner in my survey. That's a personal choice I can make professionally. However, that being said, when you're going to a corner that the documentation is properly prepared on, and it's been through the process and has really been looked at closely, and there's a summary document put together that's on the internet, on file, that you can pull up the internet before you go to a corner, it's a good deal. I know when I do a survey, if I read a land corner record certificate, I can pretty much tell you whether I believe it's the corner or not just by reading the certificate. Now, a field investigation might disclose something different, but most of the time, this well-prepared document, I can read it and say, you know, it might not be the corner. Or I can say, yeah, that's the corner. So, as far as your question goes, I think it helps everybody. It has resolved a lot of issues.
Somebody want to make a motion here?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to make a motion that we do this resolution, but I would like your input with Chris. If there's any modifications you may want to make into this resolution, that I would encourage you to do so before our meeting for the end of the month.
So what we would do is we would use this as a basis, but we'd change the the conclusion to the fact that we'd like to see an administrative hearing established by the agency, and then what we'll do is we'll send that to Bob and have Bob review it, and he'll make any changes he wants, and we'll have it ready for the board meeting.
Okay, so I'll make that motion.
Second.
Can I add one other thing here? The motion can, or the resolution can be just to request a hearing.
Right. Whatever.
Yeah, in general.
Okay.
Because there's some issues that want to be discussed in memo 16.
Yep.
And at that point, we can, if the hearing goes through, then...
Okay, yeah, just discuss that with Dennis.
Yep, and we'll work that out, Bob, and we'll get back to you.
Afterwards, and we'll
I appreciate
get
that.
We'll get
Thank
it
you.
fixed by the end of the month. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you
in.
very much.
Thank you for coming in. Thanks, Bob.
Next, we have under new business, the review of the bidding process. Commissioner Henschel?
Thank you, Chairman. We're getting kind of late. I had a whole list of things I would go through, but if no one objects, I will just go ahead and make my motion that we appoint an ad hoc committee to review and suggest changes to the board of our bidding process.
Support.
Okay, support from Max Bauer. Any discussion?
I think through the claims and accounts process and having new commissioners in and involved in the new claims, or in the claims and accounts meetings, there have been enough questions asked of, of our structure and how we do it, and is there a list, and how do we get people on the list, and are there other ways to add to the list, and are there other ways to better inform the public about our bidding process, that I think it does warrant us taking a good look at it again, and I think the suggestion by Commissioner Henschel is a good one.
Okay. Yeah. Commissioner Maxbauer?
If this passes, I would like the ad hoc committee also, and I know we've mentioned this in committee meeting before, to take a look at whether or not the 5% difference in bids is really still as applicable today as it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because I know this board truly wants to spend tax dollars that are generated from Grand Traverse County residents, wants to spend those here.
Yeah, and my understanding was the 5% used to be 3%, so.
But and it very well may still be appropriate.
Certainly that would come under the purview of the ad hoc committee.
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting.
That's fine.
All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. At this point, I guess we'll take volunteers for that.
I'll do it.
Okay, I have Inman,
Got three.
Maxbauer, Henschel, Gilman.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
All right, then we go on to the...
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
who will be calling the meetings?
You need to appoint a chairman to the committee. We have
Well, I would
Commissioner
make
Henschel.
Commissioner Henschel the chairman then.
All right.
First chair.
I guess part of it, I wasn't sure if that was in my purview or not.
He's the one that's looking for work.
His idea, he's going to do it, right?
That's right.
Okay. And now we go to the Commissioner Inman, request for a joint meeting with the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Yeah, I just want to inform the board that two members of the Parks and Rec Commission asked to meet with the chair and the vice chair and the county administrator, just to kind of go over the rationale behind the decision that the board made on the American Legion decision. And also, it's been quite a while since we've had a joint meeting with Parks and Rec. We did make it clear in the meeting that, we do value the public's time and ability helping us with policy issues in the different areas of county government and the current structure we have. But there will be some times that the philosophy and the beliefs of the county commission do not align with our boards and commissions that we appoint. It's not often, but it could happen. Ask them not to take it personally. But they thought it would be healthy for us to have a joint meeting just to kind of go over where their philosophy is and where our philosophy is, and just to make sure we're on the right page so we don't kind of intersect again. And with regard to Commissioner Wheelock's remarks, I think that could fit right into that discussion that we would have at that Parks and Rec Commission in terms of, reaffirming their role and reaffirming our role. So I would make a suggestion that, or a motion that we try to set up a date where we can have a joint meeting.
Support.
I have a motion and support. Any further discussion?
Well, I think, Larry's exactly right. If you noticed on the thing is, the next item is a discussion that I suggested in regard to the status of the Parks and Recreation Commission. If this board is going to make decisions that are going to override the Parks and Recreation Commission, why are we routinely asking them to do their due diligence, do their research, make a recommendation, and then we overturn it? So, we truly need to have a discussion with that. If we're going to be making the decisions, then there's no sense in asking them to spend their time.
Commissioner Max Bauer?
Well, I am in favor of a joint meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission. But regarding Commissioner Wheelock's statement, the Commission on Aging Board is an advisory board. The Parks and Rec Commission is an advisory commission. There are going to be instances where there are going to be differences of opinion from the elected board versus the appointed board. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
I believe that's true, but it's also true in the situation with the baseball that we basically short-circuited the whole process. I think that's one of the issues that needs to be discussed, that there is a process, and we basically, in taking that action, we ignored the process completely. But that is something we can all talk about, I guess.
Call the vote on this, and maybe then we could move to that discussion.
Absolutely. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries to set up a joint meeting with Parks and Rec. And now we have the...
Mr. Chairman, could I make one comment, please?
Absolutely.
I've asked the board to consider this before. We tend to have these joint meetings for the purposes of dealing with issues that we have or questions that we may have. I'm just going to suggest from what I know of this situation that it's important for the county board to know what their position is prior to going in and meeting with that other board. I think often what happens is we set up these meetings without really knowing what the position of the county is. The county board is, they're expecting direction, and then we get individual commissioners in there expressing their feelings and positions, and oftentimes they don't get the direction that they need. So I'm just suggesting for you, in your own minds, to self-evaluate that. Do we know what the county board's position is on Parks and Recreation, so you can clearly kind of lay that out for them when you meet with them? I just think it would make for a more useful meeting, and I just ask you to consider that.
And my suggestion in addition to that would be that we probably should all read the rules and regulations governing Parks and Rec, which were redone just last year at a great amount of work by people both on Parks and Rec and people on this board, Commissioner Wheelock in particular. I think we should familiarize ourselves with that, going into that meeting.
Dennis, if you could provide current copies of that Parks and Recreation thing we passed last year would probably be good too.
Sure, I think several of them have it, several of you have it, but I'll be glad to get those for you.
Herb?
Yeah, I guess, Chris, you made a comment that it's just an advisory board. I think that the Parks and Recreation is more than advisory, because they really set the rules and regulations of our parks. We don't. So I think there's a difference of, between the two. I mean, so we'll see what happens, but I really think it's important that we know what is their responsibilities and what is our responsibilities. And, my personal opinion is that, we've done a disservice for our community by allowing the parks to be so fragmented throughout our whole county. And I think that we need to have that discussion. I noticed that one of the counties, Antrim County, I think, just is now proposing to do a total Parks and Recreation plan for their whole county. And I don't know if we've ever done a whole county plan. And I think that's one of the issues. I mean, we're talking about doing a civic center plan, and we've done a Twin Lakes plan, but I don't know if we've ever done a complete plan of parks for our community. That's what I would like to see us to be able to have that kind of a discussion, so that we can start to look at how do we manage our parks for our communities throughout the whole county.
Commissioner Maxbauer.
There is a county Parks Master Plan, but it expired in 2008. The Parks Commission has been attempting to get staff to bring that up to date. So far, the Parks Commission has been unsuccessful. There is a 5-year DNRE plan that expired years ago as well, and Parks Commissioner Doyer, the last meeting, as he does every meeting, says, what can we do to help you to bring that up to date? Because, you know, when that DNRE plan is not up to date, we do not qualify for any grants from the trust fund. And the response that staff said to Commissioner Doyer was, you can get me an assistant Parks and Rec director. You know, the Parks and Rec Commission is trying, Commissioner Lemkool, but we just have not been successful
Well, maybe
today.
we need to force the issue.
Larry?
Well, I think we have to view the Parks and Rec Board and many other boards as advisory, because statutorily, there's no way the public, if they disagree with them, can remove. I mean, they're immune from removal. The public's way of expressing dissatisfaction with, say, the Parks and Rec Board is through this commission here, and we are the only ones that have the authority to remove them and/or to override some decision they've made. So I think it's an important thing to be looking at.
Okay. Well, now we're actually on the next topic, so Commissioner Wheelock, since this is your thing, did you want to?
You know, I think the discussion that we're having right here is probably relevant to the item that I put on, and I think the first step is, if we truly are going to ask that the Parks and Recreation Board be reconfigured, redirected, we have to come to a consensus to that, which I'm not sure that we are even close to that at this point. But you also have to remember that the Parks and Recreation Commission was formed also under a state statute. So it's not quite the same as some of our other advisory boards. They have designated responsibilities by state law, and whether we have the ability to override those decisions, I'm not completely sure that we do. I'm not sure we haven't overstepped our bounds, at least in some instances.
Commissioner Gilman, then Commissioner Inman.
And overstepping prior to that decision, I had looked up, in fact, there was an opinion even offered by Jason Jones, and that's what I used to put forward the sheets that we signed to move forward to make that decision. So I mean, we went by Jason Jones' own recommendation on that. Personally, I think that I tend to agree with Commissioner Fleece that we really have to view these boards in an advisory capacity, perhaps with limited responsibilities or with certain responsibilities, but ultimately the price of bad decision making is going to come down on us anyway. So and that, I think that's right. At least the people have some level of accountability, but I think it should be more clear where we stand, and especially given what Dennis said, before we go and we sit down with them.
Okay, Larry?
Part of the reasoning behind having a joint meeting is that we can have a joint dialogue, and everyone gets to express their opinion about their roles and responsibilities. And I think that's all they're really asking for is a dialogue. I don't know if because of the nature of the joint meeting, I don't know if it would be proper for us to make a firm decision and go in there and just hammer them and say that's just the way it's going to be. I would rather go in there saying, hey, listen, we've got this agreement. This is kind of how it's structured. You have your viewpoints, we have ours. Now's the time to get everything on the table. And maybe at that meeting we can make a decision, or maybe we may make a decision after that meeting. But I'd like to at least at least extend a courtesy to the Parks and Rec members that are on there the ability to express their opinion before our board makes the final determination.
Yeah, well, it's not like we've reached any consensus here anyway.
Yeah.
Commissioner Henschel?
In respect to Mr. Aloy's comment and request for us to be more unified, just my personal feelings and the way I think the board posture would be best served is, dear Parks and Rec, we really appreciate the time you put in and the effort you put in. And we want to encourage you and enable you in any way you need, with the understanding that sometimes there's a decision made that we're going to have to overcome. And we want to work through those situations with you.
Well said. But, my other point is that, is there a better way to run our parks and recreation? We have a conservation district that runs over 1,000 acres for Grand Traverse County and does it extremely reasonable. And so, should we be looking at? And I don't know how to go about trying to decide how that should work, but I would like to start into that discussion as to, when you start looking at budgeting for outcomes, that's one of the issues, is who do you have run your programs? So maybe we need to, excuse me, maybe we need to bring in a discussion to find out what is the best way to run our parks. I don't know.
Mr. Maxbar?
Well, Dennis, I happen to think you're exactly right. We do need, as a board, to sit down, and I don't think this morning's the time. I think we probably need to set up a meeting and discuss, and maybe it's not just Parks and Rec, Commission on Aging, other boards, county planning, other boards that exist, exactly what we think those the board's role is, whether it's advisory or not. Now, and I'm just going to give you for instance, with Parks and Rec, it's my understanding that the Parks and Rec Commission can name buildings. We have that authority. This board, do you want, and my question is, and I'm just going to ask the question, I'm not expecting an answer, do you want the Parks and Rec Commission naming buildings? Or do you want them in an advisory capacity, or do you want the authority to say, no, we don't want that to be ABC building? So I think we as a board at this level need to have that discussion before we meet with the Parks Board or any other board.
In my mind, the starting point is to meet with the Parks Board and then go from there, because
we won't be.
That's fine.
Personally, I feel I'll know a lot more about how it works if we meet with them first than if we try to decide what we're going to do, and then we go in and say, okay, this is what we decided, and boom, here it is.
All right.
Because honestly, what we decided was that whole rewrite of the rules we did last year. So that, to me, is the starting point. So, anyway. Any other discussion on this issue? Okay. So, Dennis, I guess Katie will do that doodle thing, and you'll try to figure out
that doodle thing.
When a meeting, well, we got what? Was it 10 members on Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
And 9 of us, so this is going to be fun finding the time.
This will be fun.
Okay, moving on to the Martin Luther King Day training policy, and this is a referral from the Finance Committee.
Initially, to speak to that.
Yes, please
during
do.
claims and accounts, there were a number of comments regarding the bills that came in from various departments on their costs for training, and the question came up: do we have a policy that really clarifies what a department manager can and can't do in terms of cost, location, meals, those kinds of things? And I know that in the past, it's been our, I guess, philosophy that during Martin Luther King Day, it could be a combination of a lot of things. It could be one all-day session, for example, that they did previously at the Haggerty Center and having breakout sessions and those kinds of things. And it could be a half-day session for example, at the Civic Center, and the other half is donated towards other types of trainings that they want to have. And some departments don't have the ability to capture a county facility or room large enough or accommodated enough to do that training? And do they have the flexibility within their budget, training budget, to make those accommodations in terms of where they can meet and, you know, if they're going to pay for a lunch or whatever. So, you know, I think that's the purpose behind bringing this into today's meeting is, you know, we do have a resolution in place that the county does support Martin Luther King Day as the day of training for county employees, and that there has been a great deal of flexibility given to managers in terms of how they conduct their meetings, their issues, and where they have them, and if they're accommodated by a meal or not. So, to be honest with you, as long as they stay within their line item, and it's an appropriate amount, you know, a reasonable amount of money, and they've got the justification in terms of what they're trying to do, I'm fine with our current practice, but, you know, certainly, you know, if anybody else has different feelings on it, that's fine, and we can talk about it.
Mr. Henschel?
I think the specific issue that came up might be handled by a bidding process, that if you want to hold a training for your department, we have something that says, okay, you need a meal and a room, get a few bids, and it might have alleviated some of the issue here.
Does that seem a little convoluted for a $350 expenditure?
No, not to me. You know, I run a business, and if I was going to rent a room and provide meals for 20 employees or 10 employees, I'd make 3 phone calls and get a couple prices.
But for all we know, that was what happened. I mean,
it may have.
There wasn't a formal paper trail of a bidding process, but one would assume that whoever was making the decision on this meeting/lunch, you know, figured out several different possible locations and then made a decision to pick one, so.
Perhaps that could even be addressed in the ad hoc committee with particular attention to extracurricular activities such as that.
Well, I have a question. You know, the resolution states that the cost of training day will not exceed $2,000. You know, I'm assuming that is per department?
That was referring to the formal part of the program that you authorized for the morning.
Okay.
Remember, Jen came in here and said, this is what I'd like to do in the morning, and the board said, okay, you can go ahead and do that, keep the cost under $2,000.
And that limitation was something we passed in November, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have a limitation before that.
It was to put a limit on how much money she could spend on speakers and things like that, correct, Jen?
That was for the morning session, where we had 3 different presenters come.
Okay.
Yeah, the departments.
That was not for individual departments?
No, this,
Jen,
I'm
sorry, if you could just introduce yourself.
Jen Seaman, Human Resources Director. Yeah, that was for the morning session, and then the afternoon, the departments were allowed to go do what they wished for their own individual departmental training.
Okay.
And that wasn't really addressed, or the individual departments didn't really have a budget that was mentioned in my resolution.
They stated earlier that the rest of their training is based on their budgets that's been set for training and how much they have. That's their limit, you know, for the year.
Okay. Anything else on this? No. So obviously it sounds like the newly created ad hoc is going to look this over. So.
I don't see a reason why that's addressed. I mean, the department heads, we can ask the department heads to go out and look at rooms or whatever.
You're on that committee, so you can make that argument on that committee.
We're looking.
I believe we have 2 members of the committee who think that you should address it.
I see the purpose behind this bidding committee is going out and doing, signing contracts for long-term relationships and buying buying cars and vehicles. I'm not looking at this as,
Then
you know, can the department have...
then you need to convince your other committee members that that's a bad idea, so.
I mean, I'm fine with the internal suggestion that, as Dennis, as the county administrator, instructing his department heads that if you're going to use outside facilities, please go out and do, you know, your due diligence and go out
And yet, the issue in this particular instance was an elected official who is not exactly under, you know, the direct direction of Dennis, as it were.
The purchasing policy clearly states that expenditures of less than $2,000 require the department head approval. It's the responsibility of the department to obtain three verbal quotations prior to submission of the request for purchase order. So they're supposed to get 3 verbal requests on anything that's under $2,000.
Okay, anyway. So are we done on this topic then? Good. Thank you, Jen. At this point in time, we have a opportunity for second public comment. Okay. Seeing no interest, we move on to commissioner committee reports.
I'll do a
Yes,
quickie.
Commissioner Gilman.
I went out to the Peninsula Township board meeting yesterday. They did pass a solid waste ordinance, which is similar to the Traverse City. It's a mandatory program. Nobody gets out. Everybody gets in. And if you don't, they took off the part where they could attach the bill to your taxes. But short of that, it's still a mandatory program.
I do have a question. When you say mandatory program, does that mean that you are required
to participate in the garbage? Everybody's on.
Because Traverse City doesn't require you to hire, a hauler. It just says if you hire a hauler, it has to be the one.
The way that it was explained last night, and I don't have a copy of it, was that you are required, whether it be the $2 red bag or the $12 a month tote, or $13.
You have to pick one of the programs.
You're going to have to pick one of the programs.
All right.
And they also chose American Waste. Another thing that they're approaching, they did not vote on this. They did put it off for some clarification on particular issues, but they are also, as some of you might know, the ambulance service is, if you're a resident or a family member of residents, you get free ambulance service out there. They're now just going to start billing insurance companies, and if the insurance company doesn't pay, well, then that's fine. Basically, they're treating it as found money or money that's been left on the table for so many years. Some of the objections, of course, that the couple in the community had is that if they're billing the insurance companies, will the insurance companies then come back and start raising rates on the people who are already paying taxes for that particular service as it is, and then they're going to be looking at higher rates in the future, so then they wind up getting double dipped, so to speak. Just, again, that's something that's coming up. And there was a discussion, and this goes to the authority of different boards. They had a discussion of the direct authority of the fire board over personnel. Now, apparently the attorneys feel that the fire board does have the ability to make hiring and firing decisions. However, the statutes for Michigan pretty much say that it is the township board that makes those decisions. So I suppose they could assign that authority. I don't know, but that's my report.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been asked for a couple of different people to bring back the contracting for janitorial services, and I wonder what the process would be for us to be able to do that. Do we put that on our agenda? Do I ask for it to be on the agenda? How do I, please?
What was your comment, Herb? I didn't hear.
About the contracting out for cleaning services for our facilities, as to bringing it back on the agenda or having a discussion about it again or something like that.
Well, I would suggest you put it on the RMA agenda next month and have Danny come in and talk with you about it. If you want to review the bids we had, we can bring those bids back so you can get some idea of the comparison.
Yeah, I think we'd like to. I'd like to see that.
Could we include that in the packet for the meeting along with the motion?
Well, I think I think.
It's not a motion, it's
It's
just.
just a request, and I think.
There was a
Dennis-
motion before, was there not?
No.
No, there never was, okay.
He's just asking.
We're
for an agenda item.
we're at the committee,
Oh, well,
Commissioner Committee reports part.
I have something I would like put on an agenda, but I can wait until announcements or notices, whatever.
Doesn't matter, you can do it now, it doesn't matter.
Okay. As you all know, we recently lost a part-time lifeguard, Ben Meyer. And I attended the funeral yesterday. And I know Jen Seaman sent out a notice, Dennis, saying that employees were given access to a grief counselor, which I think is wonderful. My question is, what is our policy regarding employees during work time attending a coworker's funeral? And because I noticed, couldn't help but notice, that
Honestly, this is not something for this part of the meeting.
no, I want
put
it,
it on the agenda.
I'm asking, I'm just
Okay, we'll
giving
just-
this
we'll just-
information
we'll
to
just-
Dennis.
We'll just put it on the agenda then.
Fine.
Okay.
For next month.
Commissioner Fleece.
Yeah.
Okay.
Regarding Jason's comments on Peninsula Township on the billing of insurance companies, Blair's did that about a year ago, and I have the exact same sentiments. They did it because the insurance companies will pay, but who in the end ends up paying really? It's the subscriber to the insurance company. Regardless, it's just like taking federal and state money. Whose money is it really? It's our money. So it's just a round robin, and I wish that practice would go away, but.
Well, I guess the question is, and I don't really quite understand this, but if you're covered by insurance, for an ambulance ride and you need one, and you live in Blair Township, you can, instead of giving it to your insurance company, you can bill the township for it?
No, Blair Township, it sounds like Peninsula. Blair Township has a policy. We have a EMS millage, and every resident in Blair Township rides free, if we will, okay?
Okay.
There's no, our EMS department does not bill township residents. But then they found out your insurance company would cover that.
Right.
So now they're
Double
billing the
dipping.
insurance company, and the majority of the time, the insurance company does pay. It's just like if you have a house fire in the fire department millage, it didn't used to be that way, but they don't bill the homeowner, they bill the insurance company, but, and if a person doesn't have insurance that does cover it, they just, forget it.
Yeah.
Which I disagree with, because it is double dipping, if you will, and eventually, you're gonna end up paying anyway, through
Right.
higher rates.
On the other hand, if you have the insurance and you don't need that portion of it, I mean, do people go back to their insurance company and say, remove the ambulance rider because I'm covered already?
No, because it's a built-in part of the policy. See, I
Right.
don't think, it's not an optional part of the policy. No, they don't.
I mean,
The way that it was explained, the ordinance was simply going to, the billing is going to be invisible to the riders.
right.
Okay, so the riders never see anything. As usual, they're covered, they're protected, they've got their free ride to a certain point, or if there's a transfer, then there's a shared agreement with with Northflight, for example. Northflight, in fact, is going to be doing all the billing to the insurance companies for them for a cost of $25. And Northflight's going to follow up on making sure the insurance companies bill. Now, they're going to send a bill, they're going to have a particular charge that they're going to send a bill to the insurance companies for, and whatever the insurance companies pay, they're just going to take, and they're not going to worry about it beyond that. They're not even going to chase anything. It's just, we'll take whatever they give us, and it's money on the table, and if the
Right.
insurance companies continue to pay, we'll continue to take it.
Okay.
If I may, on this same topic, our health department does the exact same thing with flu shots and some other services.
But there's not a millage, special millage for that. That's the issue, is if.
Yeah, and there is in Peninsula
If
Township.
there's a special millage to cover ambulance services, then in my mind, they shouldn't
This is
have
a
paid for it.
fascinating discussion, but
But it's not even in our
love to
preview.
get this meeting over with.
Dennis, just to let you know that for March, I will not be here for Resource Administration. Can we do that? I mean, can we do it in the following month?
April?
Yeah.
Oh, your request for the agenda?
Sure.
Yeah. So,
Got it.
okay.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, I'll go back and talk about Long Lake Township, which is what I think this was, portion of the meeting was for. Long Lake Township met last night. We outlined one of the things that's ongoing right away is the Solid Waste Planning Committee meets tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. I have that on an announcement. I'll do that then, too. I outlined the procedure to them as far as the amendment and the recommendation that will come out of that. Then there's a 90-day public input process. Then the county board will act on it. Then it goes out to the townships for ratification. So outlined that procedure to them. Had a little discussion about the Parks and Recreation thing. I have, and I'm sorry I should have brought more, but I have one here today. Long Lake Township has now did a brochure called Long Lake Township Parks. And it actually does list Twin Lakes on here, even though it is a county park. It's identified as a county park, but it identifies their 600-plus acres of natural reserve that they have in Long Lake Township. And I will guarantee you, Herb, they will never talk to you about letting you control their parks. So, just a very good meeting. It's interesting, we have a lot of students that come to Long Lake Township's meeting from West High School and various places, and they always get recognized, and it's just a good thing to do. So that's all I have for
Some
that.
grins on the faces of Blair last night.
Right. We're in the notices and announcements.
I just have a
Commissioner
question for Commissioner Wheelock. The solid waste meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow, where is that?
Well, I was going to do that. If we move into notices and announcements, at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning at the Civic Center, the Solid Waste Planning Committee, that's that 14-member committee that we appointed last month, will meet at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning at the Civic Center to review the possibility of amending the county solid waste plan.
Any other notices and announcements?
8:30 tomorrow is the park session at the Haggerty Center, I think it is. So that they'll be talking about parks.
That's the State Association?
The association.
Is it I think it's at the resort.
At the resort.
Oh, is it at the, it could be at the resort, yes. Thank you.
Reservations.
Okay. Anything else?
I notice it's time to go.
No need for a closed session?
No.
I'd take a motion for adjournment. Okay, bye, Dippy.
Good night, Dick.
Somebody wake Carl up so he can go home. Somebody wake Carl up, he needs to go home.